What is up everyone, Xeno What If here. If any of you that are new to the channel, do not forget to subscribe if you want to see epic types of crossovers or what if like this. And also leave a comment down below if to see any new ideas for any videos wants me to make. To bring in the movie called, What If Rubicon Liberation Front arrived in the Boys universe. This is a crossover of Armored Core 6X The Boys What If, which is my own. Listen to your YouTube. This is not a scam and I did not own anything. Location, Atlantic Ocean 200 miles off the coast of New York City. Time, 2:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a random Tuesday. The sky screamed. Not with thunder. Not with the hollow roar of a jet engine. It screamed with the sound of reality itself being peeled back, a discordant shriek that rattled teeth, shattered glass, and sent every radar station from Norfolk to Nova Scotia into emergency blaring. Above the Atlantic, the clouds parted in a spiral. Not a storm, not a weapon, a wound. From that wound fell the xylem. VOD International, Headquarters, New York City. Same time, Crisis Management Room. Madeline Stillwell stood frozen in front of the 70-foot display wall. The satellite feed showed it clearly. A floating city, easily miles in diameter, bristling with weapon systems that her analysts couldn't even begin to classify. It had emerged from some kind of tear in the sky. Stillwell's coffee had gone cold in her hand 3 minutes ago. She hadn't noticed. Madeline Stillwell, someone tell me this is a hoax. Ashley Barrett, we've cross-referenced every satellite, every feed, every government source. It's real. Whatever it is, it's real, and it's just sitting there. Madeline Stillwell, Homelander. Ashley Barrett, already en route. He took off 30 seconds after the breach. Stillwell's jaw tightened. She didn't like unknowns. She didn't like things she couldn't spin. Madeline Stillwell, what about the Pentagon? Ashley Barrett, they're losing their minds. They thought it was a Russian first strike. Madeline Stillwell, and now? Ashley Barrett, now they're waiting. Same as us. Stillwell set down her coffee. It had gone cold anyway. Madeline Stillwell, get me a line to Homelander. I want to see what we're dealing with before he does anything stupid. The Xylem, Command Center. Time, 2:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Xylem drifted on automatic stabilization protocols, its massive engines thrumming at idle. Around it, the Atlantic churned from the displacement of its arrival. Seagulls, confused, terrified, circled at a safe distance. Inside the command center, the air was still. Not calm, still. Father Thumb Dolmayan stood at the central holotable, his weathered hands resting on its edges. His AC, Aschik, loomed in the hangar behind him, a silent monument to everything he had sacrificed. On the holotable, a perfect rendering of the world below. It was blue, unscarred, no coral wildfires. No continent-spanning burn scars. No Ibis series wrecks littering the landscape. Thumb Dolmayan, this is not Rubicon. His voice was quiet, not a question. Uncle Middle Flatwell stood at his right shoulder, his arms crossed. His AC, Tsubasa, was still cycling up in the bay, its systems running diagnostics from the transit. Middle Flatwell, no, it is not. Thumb Dolmayan, the coral. Middle Flatwell, I've run every scan. Every frequency. There's no coral signature anywhere on this planet. A pause. Middle Flatwell, there's also no trace of the PCA. No trace of any off-world colonization that matches our records. Whatever this place is, we are not supposed to be here. Thumb Dolmayan closed his eyes. Thumb Dolmayan, and yet here we are. Arshile, the RLF's mercenary liaison, stepped forward from the comm station. Her face was pale under the harsh lights. Arshile, father, we're picking up civilian broadcasts. Dozens of them. This world has supers. Corporate-sponsored superheroes. Thumb Dolmayan opened his eyes. Thumb Dolmayan, corporate-sponsored. Arshile, it's complicated. But the short version is, a company called VOD International controls almost all of them. They're treated like celebrities. Like products. The room went quiet. Index Dunham, standing near the rear wall with her arms wrapped around herself, spoke first. Index Dunham, that sounds familiar. Little Z, seated on an ammunition crate, nodded slowly. Little Z, the The corporations on Rubicon didn't wear capes. But they wore suits. Same rot underneath. Ring Freddy, polishing the edge of his blade, the same blade he kept in his cockpit, looked up. Ring Freddy, so we've traded one corporate tyrant for another. Thumb Dolmayan, it would seem so. Middle Flatwell, we don't know enough yet. We need to observe. We need to understand before we act. The holodable beeped. Arshile, incoming. Fast-moving aerial contact. She tapped the display. Identification unknown. Speed is, that's not a jet. That's a person. Thumb Dolmayan, one of their supers. Arshile, likely. Middle Flatwell, hostile. Arshile, approaching with weapon systems active. Thumb Dolmayan straightened. His voice changed, no longer contemplative. Commanding. Thumb Dolmayan, bring us to alert status. Deploy MT patrols to the perimeter. I want a cordon around the xylem, but I want no shots fired unless fired upon. He looked at Flatwell. Thumb Dolmayan, Uncle, prepare Tsubasa for launch. If this super wants to talk, we'll talk. If they want to fight. Middle Flatwell, they'll learn why Rubicon never fell. The Atlantic, airspace above the xylem. Altitude, 15,000 feet. Homelander hovered in the sky, his cape snapping in the wind. Below him was a city. Floating, armed to the teeth, no flag, no insignia, no VOT branding anywhere. His comm crackled. Madeline Stillwell, VO, Homelander. What are you seeing? Homelander, something new. There was no fear in his voice. There was never fear. But there was something else, a flicker of curiosity. Of interest. The world had bored him. The same threats, the same sycophants, the same desperate faces begging for his approval. But this was different. Homelander, it's a floating military installation. Civilian population, from the look of it. And they're deploying mechs. Madeline Stillwell, VO, mechs. Homelander, walking tanks. A lot of them. He watched as dozens of MTs, muscle tracers, launched from the xylem's hangar bays, forming a defensive perimeter in the air and on the water below. They moved with coordination, with purpose. Homelander, they're organized. Military discipline. Madeline Stillwell, VO, did they look hostile? Homelander, cautious. They haven't shot at me yet. Stillwell's voice sharpened. Madeline Stillwell, VO, don't give them a reason to. Hold position. I'm sending backup. Homelander, I don't need backup. Madeline Stillwell, VO, this isn't about need, Homelander. This is about optics. If something happens to you. Homelander, nothing's going to happen to me. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Homelander, I'm curious, Stillwell. Let me be curious. He cut the comm. The xylem, outer observation deck. Rusty stood at the railing, his AC steel haze Ortis docked directly behind him. He was still wearing his pilot suit, a habit he hadn't shaken. The wind from the Atlantic whipped around him, cold and salt stung. He watched the figure in the sky. Homelander. Rusty had already run the facial recognition through the xylem's databanks. No matches. No records at all. But the way that man hovered, the casual arrogance, the absolute certainty that he was untouchable. Rusty had seen that before. On Rubicon. On the Corp's top aces. On the ones who thought being powerful meant being right. Rusty, buddy. He said it quietly, to himself. Rusty, I think we just found this world's version of Arquebus. 612. Richard stepped up beside him. His AC, reverse orb, was still undergoing final calibration, but he'd wanted to see the sky with his own eyes. 612. You think they're all like him? Rusty, the broadcasts say yes. 612. Then we've got our work cut out for us. Rusty nodded slowly. Rusty, yeah. He looked back at the xylem, at the MTs forming their defensive cordon, at the families and refugees and soldiers who had followed Father Dolmayan across the stars to escape one hell, only to land in another. Rusty, but we've fought worse than capes and PR teams. 612, have we? Rusty, we fought the corporations. We fought the PCA. We fought ourselves. He turned to face 612. This is just a different mask on the same monster. The Atlantic, airspace above the xylem. Altitude, 500 feet and dropping. Homelander descended. He didn't drop like a stone, nor did he fly with urgency. He floated downward like a god descending from Olympus, arms crossed, cape fluttering lazily behind him. He wanted them to see him. He wanted them to feel the sheer, oppressive weight of his presence. Below, the MT cordon shifted. 2 MTT-026 units, bulky, bipedal models, raised their arm-mounted machine guns, tracking his descent. A loudspeaker from one of the Xylem's outer defense towers crackled to life. Automated voice, unidentified airborne entity. You are entering restricted airspace. Halt your approach and identify yourself, or you will be fired upon. This is your only warning. Homelander chuckled. The sound was lost to the wind, but his smirk was visible for miles. Homelander, identify myself. I'm the guy who does whatever the hell he wants. His eyes flared red. 2 twin beams of concentrated, superheated energy lanced out from his eyes. They struck the nearest MT dead center in its chest cavity. The armor, designed to withstand standard ballistic fire and energy weapons, held for exactly half a second before the heat vision melted straight through the core. The MT exploded in a violent blossom of orange flame and shrapnel, its metallic husk crashing into the Atlantic below. The second MT opened fire. Heavy caliber rounds sparked harmlessly against Homelander's suit and skin, ricocheting into the water. He didn't even flinch. He simply turned his head, the laser beam sweeping across the second MT, slicing it cleanly in two at the waist. Homelander, smiling widely now, well, that was easy. The Xylem, Command Center. Time, 2:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The holodable flashed red. Arshile, voice tight father. 2 MTs destroyed in Sector 4. The target initiated an unprovoked attack. Thermal energy discharge of unknown origin. It just cut through the armor. Thumb Dolmayan stood perfectly still. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. He looked at the flashing red icons on the holodable, representing the lives just extinguished. Thumb Dolmayan, they have drawn first blood. On a day of peace, they have chosen war. He turned away from the table. Middle Flatwell, father, your orders. Thumb Dolmayan, we do not cower. We do not kneel. Uncle, hold your position here. Arshile, broadcast the order to the hangar. He looked toward the observation feed, where the feed showed Rusty and 612 already moving toward their armored cores. Thumb Dolmayan, Vesper 4. And Raven, intercept the target. Show this world the fires of Rubicon. The Xylem, Hangar Bay 1. The heavy blast doors hissed open. The smell of ozone, grease, and burning reactor fuel flooded the launch bay. Richard, 612, climbed into the cockpit of Reverse Orb. The neural interface connected with a sharp pinch at the base of his neck, and suddenly, the 10-meter-tall machine of war became his own body. The Melander frame hummed with raw, suppressed power, the Ming-Tang generator spooling up to combat capacity. System. Main system engaging. Combat mode. On his comms, Rusty's voice came through, smooth and unnervingly calm. Rusty, VO, you ready for this, buddy? Seems the local wildlife bites. 612. Go Chen is loaded. Missiles primed. Let's see how much force it takes to crack his halo. Rusty, VO, copy that. Try to keep up. The catapults locked onto their axe. System. Catapult standby. Launching in 3, 2, 1. Steel haze Ortis and Reverse Orb shot out of the Xylem's hangar like bullets fired from a railgun. The sheer G-force would have liquefied a normal human, but the AC pilots had endured far worse. They hit the sky, immediately engaging their quick boosts. The sonic booms of their thrusters echoed across the ocean, shattering the quiet. The Atlantic, airspace above the Xylem. Altitude, 1,000 feet. Homelander was still hovering above the wreckage of the MTs, looking distinctly bored. He was about to calm Stillwell to tell her to send in the cleanup crew when the radar in his earpiece squealed. He looked up. 2 new machines had launched from the floating city. But these weren't the slow, clunky walking tanks he'd just melted. These were fast. Impossibly fast. Steel haze Ortis moved like a blur of blue and silver, its boosters leaving contrails of scattered light as it zigzagged through the air with terrifying agility. Beside it, the heavier Reverse Orb moved with calculated, brutal efficiency, its thrusters flaring with controlled bursts. Homelander, more toys. Fine. His eyes glowed red again. He unleashed a sustained beam of heat vision, sweeping it toward Steel haze. But Rusty wasn't there. With a deafening crack of thrusters, steel haze Ortis quick boosted directly upward, the heat vision missing the AC's legs by inches. Rusty, VO, too slow. Before Homelander could track the movement, a warning klaxon blared in his ear. 612, VO, target lock. From below, Reverse Orb's left arm raised. The DFGR-07 Go Chen grenade launcher roared, spitting a massive, high-explosive round directly at Homelander's chest. Homelander didn't bother to dodge. He simply puffed out his chest, ready to tank the hit and mock them. The grenade struck. The explosion was catastrophic. A sphere of fire and kinetic shockwave engulfed Homelander entirely. While the blast didn't pierce his invulnerable skin, the sheer kinetic mass of an anti-armor shell designed to shatter 10-meter mechs hit him with the force of a runaway freight train. For the first time in his life, Homelander was swatted out of the sky. He tumbled backward, violently spinning out of control, skipping across the surface of the Atlantic like a skipped stone, throwing up massive geysers of seawater before finally skidding to a halt. In the air above, Reverse Orb hovered, the barrel of the Go Chen smoking. 612. Target displaced. He's durable. The explosive force didn't breach his physiology, but he feels momentum just like anything else. Steel haze Ortis drifted down next to him, the Alba frame gleaming in the afternoon sun. Rusty, VO, good to know. He thinks he's a god. 612. Let's remind him what gravity feels like. Below them, the water began to boil. Homelander shot out of the ocean, suspended in the air. His suit was dripping wet. His hair was plastered to his forehead. And his face was twisted into a mask of absolute, unhinged fury. The confident smirk was gone. The casual arrogance was dead. Homelander, screaming, his voice breaking, "You fucking metal freaks. I am the Homelander. I can do whatever I want." He surged upward, breaking the sound barrier instantly, flying straight at Reverse Orb with both fists extended, intending to punch straight through the cockpit. 612. He's lost his temper. Predictable. Richard's hands flew across the controls. System. Expansion, assault armor primed. 612. Let him come. As Homelander blurred into a streak of red, white, and blue, the Ming-Tang generator inside Reverse Orb screamed with overcharged intensity. Richard, 612, didn't pull back. He waited until he could see the sheer, veins bulging madness in Homelander's eyes, the look of a man who had never been told, no, let alone been hit by a grenade. 612, get off my sensor. System. Assault armor, activated. A massive, spherical pulse of pale green coral substitute energy detonated outward from Reverse Orb. It wasn't just an explosion, it was a localized distortion of space and kinetic energy. Homelander, moving at Mach 2, slammed directly into the expanding wave of the assault armor. The collision sounded like a mountain cracking in half. The invincible hero didn't punch through. Instead, the energy wall intercepted his momentum, turning his own speed against him. His cape shredded at the edges, and the air was punched out of his lungs as he was launched backward, the shockwave rippling the ocean for miles. Rusty. Nice timing, 612. My turn to keep him busy. As Homelander reeled in midair, coughing and disoriented, Steel Haze Ortis disappeared. Rusty engaged the Alba frame's high-spec boosters, circling Homelander in a dizzying display of Schneider tech agility. To Homelander, it was like being swarmed by a giant, metal hornet. Every time he tried to focus his heat vision, Rusty was already gone, leaving only a trail of blue light. Rusty, you're used to fighting people who can't hit back, aren't you? Buddy, you wouldn't last a minute in the wall climber operation. Rusty squeezed the trigger. The VVC 774 plasma rifle spat bolts of searing violet energy. They didn't just impact, they splashed. The plasma coated Homelander's skin, the extreme heat causing his invulnerable flesh to sizzle and his nervous system to scream in a way he'd never experienced. Homelander, screaming, "Stupid T." He unleashed a blind, 360-degree sweep of heat vision. Rusty saw it coming. System. Quick turn. Steel Haze Ortis flipped backward, the red beams carving a line across the AC's shoulder armor but failing to catch the core. VOD International, Crisis Room. The feed from the long-range cameras was stuttering. Madeline Stillwell's hands were shaking so violently she had to grip the edge of the table. On the screen, the God of America was being toyed with. Ashley. The power readings, Madeline. Those machines, they're putting out energy levels comparable to a small nuclear reactor. And their reaction speeds, no human can move that fast. Stillwell. He's losing. Homelander is losing. She felt a cold, sinking realization. Vought wasn't just facing a new soup. They were facing a civilization that had mastered the art of killing things much larger and more dangerous than a man in a cape. The Xylem, Command Center. Thumb Dolmayan watched the combat data streaming in. His face remained a weathered mask of stone, but his eyes tracked the efficiency of the AC pilots. Dolmayan. He is a singular point of power. No formation. No tactical awareness. He relies on his hide and his eyes. He is not a soldier. He is a bully. Middle Flatwell. A bully with the power of a god, father. If he gets a lucky hit on a cockpit. Dolmayan. Then we ensure he doesn't get the chance. Arshile. Signal the kite drones. Let's see how he handles 1,000 targets at once. The battle 5,000 feet above the Atlantic. Homelander finally managed to stabilize. He was scorched, his suit was a ruin, and for the first time in his life, he felt pain. Real, burning, stinging pain. Homelander. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to find everyone you love, and I'm going to. He stopped. From the belly of the Xylem, thousands of tiny, glowing lights began to pour out. 9,990 EA-24, kite drones. They swarmed like a metallic cloud, darkening the sun. And then, another AC rose from the Xylem. AC Aschik. Thumb Dolmayan's voice boomed over every radio frequency in the area, overriding Homelander's internal Vought comms. Dolmayan. You speak of killing those we love. We are the Rubicon Liberation Front. We have watched our world burn for generations. We have lived in the ash of corporate greed. You are nothing but a spoiled child playing with a candle. 612 leveled the Go-Chen once more. Rusty readied his laser blade, the blue energy humming with a lethal edge. 612. You're not a god, Homelander. Rusty. You're just another target. The kite drones began to dive. The axe surged forward. Homelander looked at the thousands of incoming threats, the massive floating city, and the two steel giants that had already humbled him. For the first time since he was a child in a lab. The Homelander felt fear. Homelander's scream of frustration was drowned out by the collective hum of 10,000 kite drones. They didn't just fly, they swarmed with a hive-mind intelligence that made the Seven's tactical meetings look like a preschool play. Homelander. Get away from me. He spun in the air, his heat vision wide and desperate. He sliced through a dozen drones, then 50, then 100. Metal rained into the ocean, but for every drone he destroyed, 10 more took its place. They peppered him with small-caliber kinetic fire. It didn't pierce his skin, but the sheer, relentless staccato of thousands of impacts began to disorient him. It was like being trapped inside a giant, metallic beehive. Rusty. He's blind. 612. The drones are masking our heat signatures. Close the distance. 612. Richard copy. Engaging Varel legs for high-altitude stabilization. Reverse Orb's massive quad legs shifted, locking into a hovering platform mode. The Ming-Tang generator roared, feeding power into the BMLG-2 PO-3 MLTO-6 missile pods on its back. 612. Multi-lock engaged. Let's see if he can dodge 100 angles at once. The missile pods popped open, unleashing a swarm of micro-missiles that trailed white smoke across the blue sky. They didn't fly straight, they curved, zigzagging to intercept Homelander from his blind spots. Vought International, Crisis Room. The room was silent, save for the sound of Ashley Barrett hyperventilating. On the main screen, the greatest hero in the world was being systematically disassembled. Madeline Stillwell. Where is the rest of the Seven? Where is Maeve? Where is Stormfront? Ashley. Maeve she's refusing to fly out there. She saw the footage of the first MT exploding. She said, and I quote, I'm not fighting a skyscraper that flies. In Stormfront, she's halfway to NYC, but these energy readings are scaring her off. Stillwell. Grip tightening on the table, he's going to die. If he dies, Vought's stock doesn't just drop, the company ceases to exist. Connect me to the floating city. Now. Technical analyst. Ma'am, they're overriding our encryption. They aren't just blocking us, they're broadcasting. The Xylem, Command Center. Arshile. Father, we have a secure line to the Vought leadership. They're pleading for a ceasefire. Thumb Dolmayan, looking at the screen where Homelander was currently being hammered by Rusty's plasma rifle, a ceasefire. They sent a butcher to our doorstep and now they ask for mercy. No, we do not negotiate with the architects of greed. Middle Flatwell, father, look at the sensor. Something is approaching from the north. High velocity signature. The battle 5,000 feet. Homelander was panting, his chest heaving. His cape was a charred rag. He had never been this tired. Every time he tried to fly toward the xylem, Steel Haze Ortis would appear out of nowhere, a blue blur that delivered a staggering blow from a laser blade or a point-blank plasma burst. Homelander. I'll kill you all. Suddenly, a crackle of lightning tore through the drone swarm. Stormfront arrived in a burst of violet electricity, her eyes glowing white. She blasted a path through the kite drones, stopping beside a battered Homelander. Stormfront. John, what the hell is this? Why haven't you leveled this thing yet? Homelander. Voice cracking. They don't stop, Stormy. They don't break. Rusty. Another one. 612, we've got a new contact. High electrical output. Looks like she's a live wire. 612, adjusting FCS. I've got a lock on the newcomer. Rusty, you take the God. I'll take the Thunderbolt. Rusty. Roger that, buddy. Let's finish this. Steel Haze Ortis boosted, its alba frame screaming as it broke the sound barrier. Rusty didn't use his rifle this time. He drew the laser blade, the energy lengthening into a massive, shimmering scythe of blue light. Rusty, I've fought bigger, super weapons than you in the snowy fields of Rubicon. You're just a man in a costume. With a quick boost, Rusty vanished and reappeared behind Homelander. The laser blade swung in a massive arc. Homelander shrieked as the blade carved a deep, cauterized line across his back. It didn't cut him in half, but it burned through his invulnerability, the first real wound he had received in decades. Meanwhile, Reverse Orb turned its heavy Go-Chen grenade launcher toward Stormfront. 612, you like lightning. Try high explosive kinetic force. Boom. The grenade detonated right in Stormfront's face. She wasn't as durable as Homelander. The blast sent her spiraling toward the ocean, her screams lost in the roar of the Xylem's engines. The aftermath. Homelander looked down at the water where Stormfront had disappeared. He looked at the thousands of drones still circling him. He looked at the two massive, silent steel giants hovering before him, their weapons leveled at his head. And finally, he looked at the Xylem, a city that had traveled across the stars, carrying people who knew exactly how to kill a monster. Over every TV in America, every phone, and every billboard in Times Square, the face of Father Thumb Dolmayan appeared, replacing the VOT advertisements. Thumb Dolmayan, people of this earth. We are the Rubicon Liberation Front. We did not come to conquer you. We came because our world was stolen by the same greed that feeds your heroes. We have seen your gods. We have weighed them, and we have found them wanting. He looked directly into the camera, his eyes cold and ancient. Thumb Dolmayan, to VOT International, the Xylem is now a sovereign zone. If you send another hero, we will not just defend ourselves. We will bring the fires of Rubicon to your doorstep. The age of the corporate god is over. Homelander, broken and bleeding, watched as the Xylem began to move, not away, but toward the New York coastline. The shadow it cast was long, and for the first time in history, VOT had no script for what came next. 612, he's retreating, Rusty. Rusty, let him run, buddy. He needs to tell his friends what happens when they cross the Liberation Front. The two acts turned back toward their floating home, their thrusters glowing like new stars in a sky that finally felt a little less crowded. The interior of the warehouse was thick with the smell of stale beer, gun oil, and the frantic tapping of keys. Frenchie was hunched over a rack of monitors, his eyes wide, reflecting the chaos being broadcast across every frequency. Billy Butcher stood behind him, a crowbar hanging loosely in one hand, a cigarette smoldering in the corner of his mouth. He wasn't looking at the news. He was looking at the horizon through a cracked window, where the massive, jagged silhouette of the Xylem was beginning to blot out the sun over the Jersey City skyline. Mother's milk. Staring at a tablet, his voice trembling, they just swatted him. Like a fly, Billy. Homelander is bleeding. He's actually bleeding. Huey, pacing, hands in his hair, this isn't possible. Vought said he was indestructible. Nothing on Earth. Butcher. Spitting out a cloud of smoke. That's the thing, isn't it, Huey? That thing in the sky. That ain't from Earth. It's a giant, flying middle finger from the stars. Frenchie. Mon Dieu, look at the telemetry. These armored cores, the energy they put out, it's not compound V. It's physics. Brutal, cold, mechanical physics. They aren't superheroes. They are soldiers. The Xylem, docking bay 7. The massive magnetic locks of the reverse orb hissed as they engaged, securing the heavy Melander frame into its gantry. The cockpit opened with a pressurized groan, and Richard, 612, climbed out, his pilot suit damp with sweat. Rusty was already on the catwalk, leaning against the railing of the steel haze Ortis, watching the maintenance drone swarm over his AC to repair the minor scorch marks from Homelander's heat vision. Rusty. Not bad for a Tuesday, buddy. Though I think we just gave the local PR department a collective heart attack. 612. They're not used to being told, no. That man, Homelander. He wasn't a pilot. He was a child with a loaded gun. Rusty. Darkly, the most dangerous kind. But look down there. He pointed toward the city below. From the height of the Xylem, New York looked like a toy set. But even from here, they could see the lights flickering, the traffic jammed, and the thousands of people standing on rooftops, looking up, not with the practiced adoration they gave the Seven, but with a raw, terrifying hope. New York City, streets of Manhattan. 48 hours after first contact. The Xylem drifted 3 miles above the Atlantic, just off the coast of Long Island. Its shadow stretched across Brooklyn and Queens like an eclipse that refused to end. Below, the world had stopped pretending. Every television station ran the same loop, Homelander bleeding. Stormfront burning. The 2 armored cores hovering like titans over a broken god. And then the speech. Father Thumb Dolmayan's weathered face, broadcast simultaneously across 847 million screens worldwide, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had watched his own world die and refused to let it happen again. Vought International, boardroom. 7 a.m. The table was mahogany. Polished. Expensive. The men and women sitting around it were supposed to be the most powerful people in media. In pharmaceuticals. In the business of God-making. They looked like hostages. Stan Edgar sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Madeline Stillwell stood beside him, clutching a tablet so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Ashley Barrett was crying quietly in the corner. Stan Edgar, explain it to me again. Slowly. Without the panic. Stillwell's voice cracked. Madeline Stillwell, we've run every scenario. Every countermeasure. We tried to get Maeve to engage. She refused. Black Noir was dispatched last night. He never made it within 5 miles of the Xylem. Their perimeter defense, those drones, intercepted him. He's in a medical bay right now. 3rd degree burns over 60% of his body. Stan Edgar, and Homelander. The room went cold. Madeline Stillwell, he's in isolation. He won't come out. He's not responding to anyone. Not even me. Stan Edgar, leaning back, steepling his fingers, so let me understand the situation. Our primary asset, a weapon of mass destruction designed to be unbeatable, was humiliated in open combat. Our secondary assets are either refusing orders or being hospitalized. And a floating city full of refugees from another dimension has declared itself a sovereign nation directly over our most profitable market. A long silence. Stan Edgar, what do they want? Madeline Stillwell, we don't know. They're not responding to diplomatic overtures. Every time we try to open a channel, they route us to an automated message repeating the same phrase, the Coral remembers. So do we. Stan Edgar stood up. Stan Edgar, then we find someone who can get an answer. Someone they can't ignore. The Xylem, residential sector. 9 a.m. The city that floated above the Atlantic was not a warship. Not entirely. Deep within its armored hull, past the hangar bays and weapons depots and command centers, there were neighborhoods. Streets lined with prefabricated housing units. Gardens growing in hydroponic bays. Children, refugees from the fires of Ibis, survivors of the PCA occupation, playing with toys made from salvaged MT components. 612 walked through these streets in civilian clothes, his pilot suit traded for a worn jacket and boots that had seen better years. He was 37 years old. He had been fighting since he was 17. Rubicon had aged him past his years. But here, walking among the families who had followed the RLF across the stars, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. A child ran up to him, a girl, maybe 8 years old, with dark skin and bright eyes. She held up a crude drawing, 2 stick figures in crayon, one colored blue, one colored gray, standing over a red smear. Child. Mr. Richard. Mr. Richard. I drew you and Mr. Rusty fighting the bad man. 612 knelt down, taking the drawing carefully. 612. This is really good. Is that his cape? Child. Yeah. And that's the fire from his eyes, but you guys dodged it. 612 smiled. It was a small thing, barely a twitch of his lips, but it was real. 612. We sure did. You know why? Child. Because you're the best pilots ever. 612. Because we protect each other. That's what the Liberation Front does. We protect each other. He handed the drawing back, ruffling her hair. Little Z approached from behind, her arms crossed. She was wearing her pilot suit, the ACUU undergoing maintenance in the bay behind her. Little Z, you're good with them. 612 stood up, his knees cracking. 612, someone has to remind us what we're fighting for. Little Z, Father Dolmayan wants to see you. And Rusty, there's been movement planetside. The local government is getting nervous. 612, let them be nervous. Little Z, they're not the ones I'm worried about. It's the other soups. The ones who think they can prove themselves by taking down the people who beat Homelander. 612, let them try. He walked past her toward the command center, his boots echoing on the metal grating. The boys' hideout, somewhere in Brooklyn. 11 a.m. Butcher hadn't slept. He stood by the window, watching the xylem drift against the gray morning sky. His reflection stared back at him, hollow eyes, clenched jaw, the ghost of a smile that never reached his eyes. Sat at the table, rubbing his temples. Mother's milk. Billy, we can't just sit here. The whole city's losing its mind. The 7 are hiding. Vought's stock is in freefall. And there's a goddamn flying fortress parked over New York. Butcher. I noticed. Mother's milk. So what's the play? Do we try to contact them? Do we run? Do we? Butcher. We watch. Huey looked up from his laptop. Huey. Watch. Butcher. There are people in the streets right now holding signs saying, Rubicon save us. They're treating these mech pilots like heroes. Butcher. Turning, and what do we do to heroes, Huey? Huey went quiet. Butcher. We don't know anything about these people. They fought Homelander, sure. But that don't make them saints. That makes them rivals. And rivals in this game. He lit a fresh cigarette. Rivals have a habit of becoming kings. Frenchie. Billy, I have been analyzing their combat data. These armored cores, they are not weapons of oppression. They are tools of survival. The way they fight, that is not the arrogance of the 7. That is the discipline of people who have lost everything. Who fight because there is nothing left but the fight. Butcher. Exhaling smoke, pretty speech, Frenchie. But I've heard pretty speeches before. From Vought. From Stillwell. From that cunt Homelander himself. Pretty words don't mean shit. He crushed the cigarette under his boot. Butcher. We find out who they really are. What they really want. And then we decide if they're part of the problem, or the solution. The Xylem, Command Center. 1 p.m. Dolmayan stood at the holotable, his hands resting on its surface like a preacher at an altar. Around him stood the leadership of the RLF, Middle Flatwell, arms crossed, watching the displays with tactical precision. Arshile, monitoring communications from around the globe. Index Dunham, quiet and observant. Ring Freddy, sharpening his blade in the corner. Rokumonson, the honorary member, sitting in Caesar position, meditating. And Rusty and 612, fresh from their debriefing. Dolmayan, you did well yesterday. Both of you. Rusty inclined his head slightly. Rusty, he was sloppy. Arrogant. We exploited what we saw. Dolmayan, as soldiers should. But now we must consider the aftermath. He gestured to the holotable, which displayed a map of the eastern seaboard, dotted with red markers representing military mobilizations, soup sightings, and civil unrest. This world is reacting to us. Not with unity. With fear. With opportunism. Middle Flatwell, The United States government has mobilized 2 carrier groups. They're maintaining distance, but they're watching. Vought is scrambling to contain the PR disaster. And the soups, the ones not under corporate control, are beginning to surface. Some want to fight us. Some want to join us. 612. Join us. Middle Flatwell. There are dissidents in this world. People who have been hurt by Vought. By the 7. They see us as liberators. Thumb Dolmayan. We are not liberators. We are refugees. We did not come here to save this world. We came here because our own world was dying, and the coral brought us through the tear. Rusty. But we're here now. And that man, Homelander, he's not going to forget what happened. Neither is Vought. They're going to try again. Different tactics. Different weapons. But they will try. Dolmayan nodded slowly. Thumb Dolmayan. Then we prepare. Not for conquest. For survival. We fortify the xylem. We expand our patrols. And we reach out, quietly, to those who have suffered under the corporate boot. He looked at Rusty. Thumb Dolmayan. You were a spy once, Vesper 4. You know how to move in shadows. Rusty. A flicker of something dark crossing his face. I know how to find the cracks in a system. Thumb Dolmayan. Then find them. Find the people in this world who hate Vought as much as we hated Arquebus. And find out if they are allies, or liabilities. Red River Institute, upstate New York. 4 p.m. The facility was hidden in the woods. Unmarked roads. Fences topped with razor wire. A place for children Vought wanted to forget. But someone else had found it. 612 stood at the tree line, wearing dark civilian clothes, a pair of binoculars pressed to his eyes. Beside him, crouched in the underbrush, was Little Z, small, silent, deadly. Little Z, this is where they keep the rejects. 612, that's what the intel says. Kids with powers Vought can't monetize. Can't control. Too dangerous to kill. Too useful to let go. Little Z, sounds familiar. 612 lowered the binoculars. 612, on Rubicon, the Corps did the same thing. Took the augmented humans, the ones who survived the surgery, and threw them into the grinder. The ones who didn't fit. The ones who asked questions. He paused. They disappeared. Little Z, you think these kids are like us? 612, I think they're like everyone who's ever been told they're too dangerous to be free. A security patrol passed along the fence line. 2 guards, armed with automatic rifles and wearing Vought branded body armor. 612, we're not here to fight tonight. Just to watch. To learn. Little Z, and if we see something we don't like. 612, then we come back. With axe. He turned away from the fence, melting back into the forest. Behind him, in one of the facility's windows, a young girl pressed her face against the glass. She couldn't have been more than 10. Her eyes glowed faintly, a flickering orange, like embers in a dying fire. She was watching the tree line. And she was smiling. Vought Tower, Homelander's private quarters. 9 p.m. He sat in the dark. The penthouse suite, all glass and polished marble and custom furniture, felt like a tomb. The city lights glittered below, but Homelander didn't see them. He saw the blue blur of Steel Haze Ortis. Heard the thunder of Reverse Orb's assault armor. Felt the burn of the plasma rifle on his skin. His skin. It had never burned before. Not really. Not like that. He looked at his hands. They were steady. They always were. But underneath the surface, something was shaking. Fear. He had forgotten what it felt like. A knock at the door. Stillwell's voice, strained. Madeline Stillwell, VO, Homelander. Can I come in? He didn't answer. The door opened anyway. She stepped inside, her heels clicking on the floor. She stopped when she saw him, sitting on the edge of his bed, still wearing the tattered remnants of his suit, his hair unwashed, his eyes hollow. Madeline Stillwell. John. Homelander. They hit me. His voice was flat. Dead. Homelander. They hit me and it hurt, Madeline. Madeline Stillwell. I know. I saw. Homelander. No one's ever hurt me. Not since the lab. Not since they put me in that room and, he stopped. His jaw tightened. Who are they? Madeline Stillwell. We're still trying to figure that out. But John, listen to me. Homelander. I listened to you. You said I was untouchable. You said nothing on Earth could hurt me. Madeline Stillwell. they're not from Earth. Homelander looked up at her. His eyes were red. Not glowing, just red. Bloodshot. Human. Homelander, then how do I kill something that's not from Earth? How do I make them afraid of me? Stillwell didn't have an answer. For the first time in her career, she had nothing. Homelander stood up slowly. His reflection stared back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows, a broken god in a ruined cape. Homelander, I need to be alone. Madeline Stillwell, John. Homelander, out. She left. And Homelander stood there, alone in the dark, watching the Xylem drift across the sky like a promise of violence yet to come. The Xylem, observation deck. 11 p.m. Rusty stood at the railing, looking down at the lights of New York. 612 joined him, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered one to Rusty. 612, can't sleep. Rusty, never could. Not after Rubicon. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the world turn beneath them. 612, you think we can trust them? The locals. Rusty, which locals? The ones with powers. The ones without. The ones in charge. 612, any of them. Rusty took a sip of his coffee. It was bitter. He liked it that way. Rusty, no, but that's not new. We've never been able to trust anyone. That's why we have each other. 612, you really believe that? Rusty turned to look at him. In the low light, his scarred face looked almost young. Rusty, I have too. Otherwise, I'd have to admit that we're alone. And I've been alone before, buddy. I don't recommend it. 612 nodded slowly. 612, the kids. At that facility. Z and I scouted it today. They've got experiments in there. Kids with powers Vought doesn't want the public to see. Rusty, sounds familiar. 612, yeah. It does. Another long silence. 612, what if we're just bringing the same fight to a new world? What if we're the monsters here? Rusty set down his coffee. He turned to face 612 fully, his expression hard. Rusty, we're not monsters. We're survivors. And if this world has people in cages, children in cages, because they're different, then we do what we've always done. 612, which is, Rusty, we break the cages. He looked back at the city below, at the lights flickering in the darkness, at the long shadow of the Xylem stretching across the water. Rusty, we break every single one. The Xylem, Research Sector, Deep Maintenance Bay 12. 3 a.m., 3 days after first contact. The bay was not supposed to exist. Not officially. While the public maps of the Xylem showed only residential sectors, hangar bays, and command centers, there were places even Father Dolmayan rarely spoke of. Places where the coral had been studied. Where the truth of Rubicon's transformation had been documented in cold, clinical detail. Dr. Alara Venn had been the RLF's chief xenobiologist for 14 years. She had watched the coral bloom across Rubicon's surface. She had documented its mutations, its harmonies, its quiet, terrifying intelligence. And now she stood in front of a containment chamber that should have been empty. It wasn't. Dr. Alara Venn, Arshile. You need to see this. Arshile stepped through the blast doors, her boots echoing on the grated floor. She had been monitoring planetary communications when the page came through, urgent, coded, and trembling with something Arshile had never heard in the doctor's voice before. Fear. Arshile. What am I looking at? Dr. Alara Venn gestured to the containment chamber. Inside, suspended in a magnetic field, was a single vial of dark red liquid. It pulsed, not with the rhythm of a pump or a machine, but with something organic. Something alive. Dr. Alara Venn, I ran deep spectrum analysis on the atmospheric samples we collected during the transit. The tear in space-time, whatever brought us here, it didn't just displace us. It pulled something else with us. Arshile stepped closer to the chamber. The vial pulsed again, and she felt it, a vibration in her chest, like a second heartbeat. Arshile, is that coral? Dr. Alara Venn, trace amounts. Nanoscopic. But it's replicating. Slowly. The magnetic field is the only thing keeping it contained. Arshile, why would you contain it? We left Rubicon to get away from the coral. The doctor's face was pale under the harsh lighting. Dr. Alara Venn, because it's not the coral we knew. It's different, muted, like a memory of coral. But it's responding to something. Reaching for something. Arshile. Reaching for what? Dr. Alara Ven. I don't know. But look. She tapped a monitor, bringing up a spectral analysis graph. The coral's wavelength was displayed in pulsing red. Overlaid on top of it, barely visible, but unmistakable, was a second wavelength. Blue. Dr. Alara Ven. There's something else in this world. Something that resonates with the coral. Something that's calling to it. Red River Institute, upstate New York. Simultaneous 3 a.m. The girl pressed her palm against the glass. Her name was Celine. She was 9 years old. She had been at Red River for 3 years, since the day her parents had called Vought, begging them to fix their daughter. Her eyes glowed the color of dying embers. She wasn't asleep. She never really slept. Not since the pulse. Not since 3 nights ago, when the sky had torn open over the ocean and something had changed. Celine. They're here. Her roommate, a 12-year-old boy named Marcus who could phase through walls but couldn't control when, looked up from his bunk. Marcus. Who's here? Celine. The ones like us. Marcus. There's no one like us. That's why we're in this place. Celine shook her head. Her eyes flared brighter, casting orange shadows on the walls. Celine. Not like us in the powers. Like us in the feeling. The loneliness. The anger. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass. They're out there. In the big floating thing. And they're looking for something. Marcus. Looking for what? Celine. I don't know. But they're going to find it. And when they do. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were burning. Celine. Everything changes. The boys' hideout, Brooklyn. 6 a.m. Butcher hadn't slept again. He was standing over the table, staring at a collection of photographs spread across the surface. Surveillance shots. Satellite images. Thermal scans of the xylem taken by every intelligence agency on the eastern seaboard. Walked in with a pot of coffee, his eyes puffy. Mother's milk. You're gonna kill yourself, Billy. Butcher. Not today, I won't. He pointed at one of the photos, a zoomed-in image of the xylem's underbelly, showing the hangar bays and launch catapults. Butcher. Look at this. These launch mechanisms. These weapon systems. This isn't a civilian vessel, This is a warship. A fucking fortress. These people didn't just stumble through a hole in the sky. They came here ready to fight. Mother's milk. Fight who? Butcher. That's the question, innit? He lit a cigarette. They didn't know Homelander existed until they got here. So whoever they were ready to fight, it wasn't him. Frenchie emerged from the back room, holding a tablet. Frenchie. I have been digging through the communications intercepts. Billy, you are not going to believe this. Butcher. Try me. Frenchie. They're speaking a language that doesn't exist. Linguistic roots I have never seen. But the translation algorithms, they are picking up patterns. Phrases. One keeps repeating. Huey, shuffling in with bedhead and a hoodie, yawned. Huey. What phrase? Frenchie looked up, his face pale. Frenchie. The coral remembers. So do we. The room went quiet. Butcher. Coral. Like the reef shit. Frenchie. No. Not reef. In their context. I think it is a name. A thing. Maybe a weapon. Maybe a person. Butcher took a long drag from his cigarette, staring at the xylem through the grimy window. Butcher. Find out. And find out fast. Because that thing in the sky. It's not going anywhere. And sooner or later, someone's gonna poke it with a stick. He crushed the cigarette. Butcher. And I want to know what happens before I decide which side of the stick I'm standing on. Vought Tower, Stan Edgar's office. 8 a.m. The coffee was black. The blinds were drawn. The door was locked. Stan Edgar sat behind his desk, his hands folded, his expression as neutral as a stone Buddha. Across from him sat a woman who was not supposed to exist. Her name was Dr. Cecilia Morrison. She had been the head of Vaught's Special Projects division for 23 years. Officially, she had retired in 2019. And officially, she had been moved to a black site in the Nevada desert, where she continued her work on things Vought did not want the public, or the Seven, to know about. Stan Edgar, you've seen the footage. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, everyone's seen the footage, Stan. Stan Edgar, then you know why I called you back. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, you want me to build you a weapon. Something that can kill those mechs. Stan Edgar, I want you to tell me if it's possible." The doctor was silent for a moment. Then she reached into her briefcase and pulled out a manila folder, thick, worn, stamped with classification codes that had been obsolete for a decade. "Dr. Cecilia Morrison, do you know what compound V is, Stan?" "Really no." "Stan Edgar, I know what the prospectus says." "Dr. Cecilia Morrison, the prospectus is a lie. The truth is, compound V isn't a formula. It's a filter. A way to isolate something that already exists in human DNA. Something we don't understand. Something we've been trying to replicate for 30 years. She opened the folder. Inside were photographs, blurry, faded, taken in laboratories that no longer existed. Photographs of coral. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, in 1994, we detected a signal. Deep space. Incomprehensible. But it left traces. Residue. We called it red mercury. It was unstable, volatile. But when we introduced it to human test subjects. Stan Edgar, what happened? Dr. Cecilia Morrison, we created the first soups. Not the ones you know. The ones before. The ones who didn't survive. She pointed at the photographs. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, that signal. It's back. Ever since that floating city appeared, the readings have been off the charts. Whatever they brought with them, it's the same thing. The same source. Stan Edgar leaned forward. For the first time in years, there was something like interest in his eyes. "Stan Edgar, are you telling me that the Rubicon Liberation Front has compound V?" "Dr. Cecilia Morrison, I'm telling you they have the original. And if we can get our hands on it. Stan Edgar, we could control the soups. All of them. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, or make new ones. Better ones. Ones that don't need Vought's approval to exist." The room was very quiet. "Stan Edgar, what do you need?" "Dr. Cecilia Morrison, access. To that city. To whatever they're carrying. And a team that can survive the trip. Stan Edgar, I'll make some calls." He stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the xylem drifted against the morning sky, massive, silent, unknowable. "Stan Edgar, there's one more thing." "Dr. Cecilia Morrison, what's that?" "Stan Edgar, Homelander. He's unstable. He's been asking questions. About his origins. About the lab. About you." The doctor's face went pale. "Dr. Cecilia Morrison, he can't know. If he finds out what we did to him. Stan Edgar, then we make sure he doesn't. And we make sure the Rubicon people don't become a bigger problem than he is." He turned to face her. "Stan Edgar, find me a way to win, Cecilia. Or find me a way to burn it all down trying." The Xylem, Command Center. 10 a.m. Dolmayan stood at the holotable, watching the replay of Rusty and 612's engagement with Homelander. He had watched it 17 times. Each time, he saw something new. Thumb Dolmayan, he's not augmented. Middle Flatwell looked up from his tactical display. Middle Flatwell, what? Thumb Dolmayan, Homelander. Our scans show no mechanical augmentation. No neural interface. No cybernetic enhancement. His speed, his strength, his thermal projection, it's all biological. Middle Flatwell, that's impossible. No unaugmented human could survive those G-forces. Could generate that much energy without. Thumb Dolmayan, and yet. Here we are. He zoomed in on a frame showing Homelander's face, contorted in rage, yes, but also in something else. Pain. Real, physical pain. Thumb Dolmayan, he's a coral manifestation. Or something like it. Genetic. Primal. Uncontrolled. Middle Flatwell, Father, we left Rubicon to escape the coral's influence. If this world has its own version. Thumb Dolmayan, then we cannot ignore it. Rusty stepped forward from the shadows, his arms crossed. "Rusty, Dr. Ven wants to speak with you. She's found something in the research bay. Something she says you need to see in person." Dolmayan looked at Rusty, really looked at him. "Thumb Dolmayan, you know what it is." It wasn't a question. "Rusty, I have suspicions. But I'd rather be wrong." The Xylem, Research Sector, Deep Maintenance Bay 12. 10:15 a.m. Dolmayan stood in front of the containment chamber. The vial pulsed. He could feel it. A resonance in his chest. In his bones. In the scarred tissue that covered his hands. Burns from the fires of Ibis, from the coral's last, desperate bloom before the fires had consumed everything. Thumb Dolmayan, Coral. Dr. Alara Ven. trace amounts. But it's different. Dormant. But not dead. Thumb Dolmayan. How? Dr. Alara Ven. I don't know. But there's something else. She tapped the monitor, bringing up the blue wavelength overlay. Something in this world is reaching out to it. Calling to it. And the coral is responding. Dolmayan stared at the monitor. Thumb Dolmayan. Where is the signal coming from? Dr. Alara Ven. Multiple sources. But one is stronger than the others. Upstate New York. A facility called Red River Institute. The name hung in the air. 612, who had followed them into the bay, spoke quietly from the doorway. 612, we scouted that place. It's a prison for children. Kids with powers Vought doesn't want the public to see. Thumb Dolmayan turned to face him. Thumb Dolmayan, children. 612, they're doing something to them. Experiments, maybe. Or just, containment. Keeping them out of sight. Dolmayan's jaw tightened. Thumb Dolmayan. On Rubicon, the corporations did the same. Augmented humans who didn't fit the mold. Who asked too many questions. Who showed too much independence. He paused. They disappeared into facilities just like this. He looked back at the pulsing vial. Thumb Dolmayan. The coral remembers. So do we. Rusty. Father. Whatever you're thinking. Thumb Dolmayan. I'm thinking that we didn't come across the stars to hide. I'm thinking that we didn't survive Rubicon to watch another generation of children be caged by corporate greed. He straightened, his voice hardening into the tone of command. Thumb Dolmayan. Arshile. Contact the local dissidents. The ones who hate Vought. Tell them we want to talk. Arshile. And if they don't trust us. Thumb Dolmayan. Then we show them we can be trusted. Starting with Red River. Red River Institute, upstate New York. 2 p.m., that same day. The van was nondescript, white, windowless, the kind of vehicle that blended into the background of every suburban street in America. It pulled up to the main gate of Red River at 2:03 p.m. The guard at the gate, a Vought contractor named Reeves, who had been with the company for 8 years and hated every minute of it, walked up to the driver's side window. Guard Reeves, this is private property. You need to. The window rolled down. The face inside was scarred, weathered, unforgiving. Rusty, I'm here to see the children. Guard Reeves, sir, you need to turn around or I'm going to. Rusty, you're going to open the gate. And then you're going to forget you ever saw this van. Reeves reached for his radio. He never touched it. Behind him, moving with the silence of a ghost, 612 emerged from the tree line. He grabbed Reeves by the shoulder, spun him around, and pressed a neural disruptor against his temple. A soft hum. A brief shudder. Reeves collapsed, unconscious but breathing. 612, he'll be out for an hour. Plenty of time. Rusty stepped out of the van. He was wearing civilian clothes, a dark jacket, gloves, a baseball cap pulled low. But his eyes were the eyes of a soldier. Rusty, Z. Freddy, you have the perimeter. Little Z's voice crackled over the comms. Little Z, VO, east side secured. 2 guards down. Non-lethal. Ring Freddy, VO, west side secure. 3 guards. They won't be waking up anytime soon. Rusty, good. 612, you're with me. We're going in. Red River Institute, interior. 2:07 p.m. The halls were white, sterile, the kind of clean that felt like a threat. Rusty moved through them with practiced efficiency, checking corners, scanning for cameras, disabling the ones he found with a small EMP device. 612 followed close behind, his movements heavier but no less precise. 612, this place gives me the creeps. Rusty, it's supposed to. That's the point. They reached a reinforced door at the end of the hall. A keypad, a retinal scanner, the kind of security you'd expect on a military bunker. Rusty pulled a device from his jacket, a bypass tool scavenged from MT salvage, adapted for local technology. Rusty, this'll take a minute. 612, we have a minute. Rusty, we have exactly 59 seconds. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside was a dormitory. Bunk beds. Stuffed animals. Posters of the 7 on the walls. And children. Dozens of them, ranging in age from maybe 6 to 16. They stared at Rusty and 612 with wide eyes, some frightened, some curious, some with the hollow, 1,000-yard stare of people who had seen too much. A girl stepped forward. 9 years old. Dark hair. Eyes that glowed faintly orange. Celine, you're the ones from the sky. Rusty knelt down to her level. Rusty, yes, we are. Celine, we felt you coming. Before you arrived, we felt something in our heads. Like a song. A sad song. Rusty's expression softened, just slightly. Rusty, that song is called Coral. It's complicated, but it brought us here. To you. Celine, are you going to take us out of this place? Rusty, yes. No hesitation. No qualification. Celine, what if we don't want to go? Rusty, then we'll stay with you until you do. No one's going to force you to do anything. That's not what we're about. The girl studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a small, fragile thing, like a bird learning to fly. Celine, the sad song, it's quieter now. When you're here. Rusty, good. That's good. He stood up and looked at 612. Rusty, start evacuating them. Xylem's medical bay can handle the intake. We'll sort out the rest later. 612 nodded and began speaking quietly to the children, his deep voice surprisingly gentle. Rusty turned to leave, and stopped. Standing in the doorway was a woman. She was tall, blonde, dressed in black tactical gear. And she was holding a weapon that looked like nothing Rusty had ever seen, a rifle that hummed with barely contained energy. The woman, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Rusty's hand moved toward his sidearm. The woman, I'm not here to fight. I'm here to help. Rusty, who are you? The woman, my name is Mallory. Grace Mallory. And I used to run the CIA's soup division. She lowered the weapon. Grace Mallory, I've been waiting for someone like you for a very long time. The Xylem Command Center. 4 p.m. The Red River children were being processed in the medical bay. Dozens of them, ranging from toddlers to teenagers, all of them showing signs of coral resonance that Dr. Venn was documenting with a mixture of scientific fascination and quiet horror. But in the command center, the focus was elsewhere. Grace Mallory stood at the holotable, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the displays with the practiced ease of someone who had seen classified intelligence from a dozen nations. Thumb Dolmayan, you claim you want to help us. Grace Mallory, I want to help myself. In my country. And the children Vought has been abusing for decades. Thumb Dolmayan, then help us understand. What is Compound V? Grace Mallory, the short version. It's a drug, a mutagen. It gives people powers. But the long version, she paused. The long version is darker. Compound V doesn't create powers. It unlocks them. And the source of that unlocking, the original genetic template, came from something Vought found decades ago. Something they've never been able to replicate. Thumb Dolmayan, Coral. Grace Mallory's eyes widened. Grace Mallory, how do you know that name? Thumb Dolmayan, because we've been fighting it for generations. He gestured to the holotable, which displayed the spectral analysis from Deep Maintenance Bay 12, the red and blue wavelengths intertwined. Thumb Dolmayan, on our world, coral was a resource. An energy source. A weapon. And a plague. It consumed our planet. Twisted our biology. Created monsters and miracles in equal measure. Grace Mallory, that's exactly what Vought has been doing here. For 50 years. Dolmayan nodded slowly. Thumb Dolmayan, then we have more in common than I thought. Grace Mallory, what are you proposing? Thumb Dolmayan, an alliance. Not of governments. Not of corporations. Of people. People who have seen what coral does. What it can do. He extended his hand. Grace Mallory looked at it for a long moment. Then she shook it. Grace Mallory, you understand that if Vought finds out about this conversation, they'll burn everything. The Seven, the media, the government, they'll throw everything they have at you. Thumb Dolmayan, let them come. He looked toward the hangar bay, where the armored corps stood in silent rows, Aschik, Subasa, Steelhaze Ortis, Reverse Orb, and all the others. Thumb Dolmayan, we have faced worse than capes and billionaires. We have faced the end of worlds. And we are still standing. He turned back to Mallory, his eyes burning with a fire that had nothing to do with coral. Thumb Dolmayan, the coral remembers. So do we. And we do not forget, or forgive, those who would cage children in the name of profit. Vought Tower, Homelander's private quarters. 11 p.m. Homelander stood in front of the mirror. He had changed out of his ruined suit. He was wearing a casual shirt, slacks. Like a normal person. But his eyes were not normal. They were glowing, faintly, uncontrollably. He was thinking about what Stillwell had told him. About the Red River facility. About the children who had been taken. About the fact that he had been one of them. Once. Before Vought had shaped him into something else. Homelander. They took kids. Kids like me. He said it out loud, testing the words. Homelander. And now the Sky people are freeing them. He looked at his reflection. At the cracks in the mask. Homelander. Why? He had no answer. For the first time in his life, John, the man beneath the cape, had no script. No orders. No carefully manufactured narrative to follow. Just a question. And the sound of Coral, faint and distant, singing in the back of his mind. The Xylem, main hangar bay. 8 a.m., 4 days after first contact. The hangar bay was a cathedral of steel and shadow. Armored cores stood in rows along the launch decks, ASTGHIK's weathered frame bearing the scars of 100 battles, TSUBASA's sleek wings folded like a sleeping bird of prey, steel haze ortis gleaming under the maintenance lights, reverse orb's massive quad legs locked into calibration gantries. And in the center of it all, a table. Not a tactical holotable. Not a command console. A simple wooden table, salvaged from one of the Xylem's residential sectors, surrounded by mismatched chairs. Around it sat the future of two worlds. The Rubicon Liberation Front. Father Thumb Dolmayan at the head, his weathered hands resting on the worn wood. Uncle Middle Flatwell to his right, arms crossed, watching. Arshile with her tablet, recording everything. Rusty, leaning back in his chair, expression unreadable. 612. Richard, sitting straight, his pilot's hands folded in front of him. The boys. Billy Butcher at the opposite end, a cigarette burning in his hand, his eyes scanning the RLF leaders with the calculating coldness of a predator sizing up competition. Mother's Milk beside him, tense, ready. Frenchie, oddly calm, taking in the axe with something like reverence. Huey, pale and barely breathing, trying very hard not to stare at the 10-meter war machines looming behind the table. And Grace Mallory, seated between both groups, her presence the only reason this meeting was happening at all. Butcher. So, you're the cunts who punched a hole in Homelander's halo. Dolmayan didn't react to the language. He had heard worse. Had said worse. Thumb Dolmayan. We are the ones who defended ourselves against an unprovoked attack. If that resulted in your Homelander experiencing consequences for the first time in his life, so be it. Butcher. Unprovoked. You dropped a flying city in the middle of his backyard and expected him to send flowers. Thumb Dolmayan. We expected nothing. We hoped for communication. We received violence. We responded in kind. Butcher leaned forward, smoke curling from his nostrils. Butcher. You talk like a soldier. But you're not from around here. You're not from anywhere around here. So I'll ask you plain, what the fuck do you want? Dolmayan met his gaze. Thumb Dolmayan. To survive. To protect our people. And to ensure that the same rot that consumed Rubicon does not consume this world. Mother's Milk. Rot. What rot? Middle Flatwell spoke for the first time, his voice low and precise. Middle Flatwell. Corporate rot. The greed that treats human beings as assets. That commodifies suffering. That creates weapons and calls them heroes. He nodded toward the hangar bay doors, toward the distant skyline of New York. Middle Flatwell. You have a corporation here, Vought, that manufactures gods for profit. That sells hope in pill form. That locks children in cages when they don't fit the brand. Huey flinched. Butcher noticed. Butcher. You know about Red River. Rusty. We know Vought has been experimenting on children for decades. We know Compound V is not a cure. It's a chain. The room went very quiet. Frenchie. How do you know this? We have been digging for years and found only fragments. Rusty. Because we've seen it before. On Rubicon. The corporations there, Arquebus, Balam, the PCA, they did the same thing. Augmented humans. Child soldiers. Test subjects who were never meant to survive. He stood up, walking toward the hangar bay doors. Rusty. You want to know why we fight? Why we came here with weapons that could level a city? He turned back to face them. Because we've seen what happens when people like Vought are left unchecked. We've seen the fires. We've heard the screams. And we swore Swore that we would never let it happen again. Butcher stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. A dry, hollow sound. Butcher, you're a bunch of fucking refugees. Same as us. Running from something you couldn't kill. Rusty, we didn't run. We survived. There's a difference. Butcher, is there? Dolmayan rose from his chair. Thumb Dolmayan, enough. The word cut through the tension like a blade. Thumb Dolmayan, we did not invite you here to trade insults, Mr. Butcher. We invited you here because Grace Mallory told us you are the only people on this planet who hate Vought as much as we do. Butcher, hate's a strong word. Thumb Dolmayan, is it? Butcher's jaw tightened. Butcher, alright, suppose we hate them. Suppose we've been trying to bring them down for years. What difference does it make? You've got a flying fortress and giant robots. You don't need us. Thumb Dolmayan, we need something you have. Butcher, what's that? Thumb Dolmayan, knowledge of this world. Its weaknesses. Its secrets. Its people. He stepped closer to Butcher, close enough to see the exhaustion in the man's eyes. We can fight. We can kill. But we cannot win if we don't understand the battlefield. That is where you come in. Butcher didn't back down. Butcher, and what do we get in return? Thumb Dolmayan, vengeance, justice, whatever you want to call it. You help us tear down Vought's house of cards, and we help you make sure it never gets built again. A long silence. Looked at Butcher. Frenchie looked at Butcher. Huey looked at Butcher. Butcher looked at Dolmayan. Butcher, one condition. Thumb Dolmayan, name it. Butcher, Homelander is mine. Dolmayan considered this. Thumb Dolmayan, he attacked us without provocation. He killed our people. By the laws of Rubicon, his life is forfeit to us. Butcher, I don't give a fuck about your laws. I've been hunting that cunt for years. He killed my wife. He took everything from me. And I'm not letting some jumped up refugee in a tin can take that from me. Rusty's hand moved toward his sidearm. 612 tensed. But put a hand on Butcher's shoulder. Mother's milk, Billy, easy. Butcher shook him off. Butcher, no, I want to hear it. I want to hear him say it. Dolmayan studied Butcher, really studied him. Saw the grief beneath the rage. The loss beneath the bluster. Thumb Dolmayan, you remind me of someone I used to know. On Rubicon, a man who lost everything to the corporations. Who spent years hunting the ones who took his family. Butcher, what happened to him? Thumb Dolmayan, he died. Alone. In the dark. His vengeance cost him everything, including himself. Butcher, that's not an answer. Thumb Dolmayan, it's the only one I have. He stepped back, returning to his seat. Thumb Dolmayan, Homelander is yours. But if you fail, if you hesitate, we will not. Do you understand? Butcher nodded slowly. Butcher, Crystal. He sat back down, lighting a fresh cigarette. Butcher, so, where do we start? Vought Tower, sub-level 3. Simultaneous 8 a.m. Stan Edgar stood in front of a glass wall. Behind the glass was a chamber. Inside the chamber was a man. The man was naked, emaciated. His skin was stretched tight over bones that seemed too sharp, too angular. His eyes were closed, but they moved rapidly beneath their lids, dreaming, or something like it. Dr. Cecilia Morrison stood beside Edgar, her tablet displaying a cascade of biometric data. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, Subject 00. The first successful Compound V integration. Before Homelander. Before any of them. Stan Edgar, I was told he died in 1984. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, you were told what you needed to be told. Subject 00 has been in stasis for 40 years. His body is unstable. But his mind. Stan Edgar, his mind. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, it's connected. To the signal. To the choral resonance. To them. She tapped the tablet, bringing up a spectral analysis, red and blue intertwined. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, whatever the Rubicon people brought with them. Subject 00 is reacting to it. Waking up. Stan Edgar, can he be controlled? Dr. Cecilia Morrison, he was never controlled. Only, directed. Pointed at problems. But if he wakes up fully. Stan Edgar, then we point him at the xylem. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, Stan, if we wake him up completely, there's no guarantee he won't turn on us. On everyone. Stan Edgar turned to face her. His expression was calm, unreadable, terrifying. Stan Edgar, then we'd better make sure he's aimed in the right direction. He pressed a button on the wall. The glass wall began to fog. Inside the chamber, Subject O eyes opened. They were red, not the glowing red of Homelander's heat vision. A deeper red, the color of coral, the color of blood. And they were hungry. The Xylem, residential sector. 11 a.m. The Red River children had been given quarters in the Xylem's residential sector, a row of converted housing units near the hydroponic gardens. Dr. Venn had run preliminary scans on all of them. The results were troubling. The coral resonance in their bodies was undeniable. Low levels, compared to the vial in deep maintenance Bay 12, but present. And growing. Celine sat on a bench in the garden, watching a trickle of water run through an irrigation channel. The older children were helping the younger ones settle in. The RLF's civilian population had welcomed them with a kindness that felt almost alien. But Celine wasn't watching the children. She was watching the sky. 612 sat down beside her. 612, you okay? Celine, the song is louder here. 612, the choral. Celine nodded. Celine, it's happy. I think. It's been sad for so long. But now it's happy. 612, why? Celine, because it's home. She looked at him, really looked at him. Her orange glowing eyes met his. Celine, you have it too. Inside you. The song. You just can't hear it yet. 612 felt a chill run down his spine. 612, what do you mean? Celine, the coral touched you. On Rubicon. When you were fighting. When you were burning. It left something behind. She reached out and touched his hand. Celine, it's waking up. In all of you. That's why you came here. That's why the sky tore open. She smiled, a sad, knowing smile that looked wrong on a 9-year-old face. Celine, the coral remembers. So do we. And it wants to go home. The boys' hideout, Brooklyn. 2 p.m. The meeting was over. Butcher and his crew had returned to their grimy hideout to process what they'd learned. Huey was pacing. Huey, they're not superheroes. They're not even people in the way we think of people. I don't know what they are. Frenchie, they are soldiers. Simple as. Soldiers who have seen too much and lost too much and learned to fight like demons because the alternative was worse. The question is, can we trust them? Butcher stared at the ceiling, smoke drifting from his cigarette. Butcher, trust. No, never trust anyone in this game. But use. Yeah, we can use them. Huey, use them. Butcher, they have weapons that could turn half of Manhattan into a crater. You don't use people like that. You. Butcher. You what, Huey? Hold hands and sing Kumbaya. These people are dangerous. More dangerous than Homelander, maybe. Because they've got discipline. They've got a cause. And they've got nothing left to lose. He stood up, crushing the cigarette under his boot. Butcher, that makes them useful. And it makes them fucking terrifying. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. Butcher. Yeah, a voice on the other end. Male. Calm. Familiar. Homelander, VO, Mr. Butcher. We need to talk. Butcher went very still. Butcher. How did you get this number? Homelander, VO, I'm Homelander. I can do whatever I want. Including finding the phone numbers of people who want me dead. Butcher. What do you want? A pause. Homelander, VO, I want to know about the Sky people. About the coral. About what they did to Red River. Butcher. Why should I tell you anything? Another pause. Longer this time. Homelander, VO, because I think they might be the only ones who can tell me what I really am. The line went dead. Butcher stared at the phone. Billy. Who was that? Butcher. The cunt himself. The room went cold. Butcher. And he sounds scared. The Xylem, Command Center. 8 p.m. Dolmayan stood alone in the command center, looking at the holotable. The map of the eastern seaboard was dotted with markers, VOT facilities, soup hotspots, government military positions. But his eyes weren't on any of them. He was looking at a single point on the display. Red River Institute. The children had been evacuated. The facility was empty. But something had been left behind. Something Dr. Venn's scans had detected only after the children were gone. A chamber. Underground. Deep underground. And inside it, a pulse. Not coral. Something else. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Dolmayan. Ibis. He said the word quietly, to himself. But Flatwell heard him. Middle Flatwell. Father. Thumb Dolmayan. The fires of Ibis. That's what they called it on Rubicon. The moment the coral first burned. The moment our world began to die. He zoomed in on the underground chamber. Thumb Dolmayan. Vought has been digging. Experimenting. Trying to replicate what the coral did to Rubicon. And I think they may have succeeded. Middle Flatwell. Succeeded at what? Dolmayan turned to face him, his eyes haunted. Thumb Dolmayan. Creating something that can burn this world the way Ibis burned ours. The alarm klaxon blared. Arshile's voice crackled over the speakers. Arshile, VO, Father. We have an incoming contact. Bearing due west, altitude 30,000 feet and dropping fast. It's not Homelander. It's not any known soup. The feed cut to static. Then, on every screen in the command center, a face appeared. Not Homelander's. Not Stan Edgar's. A face that had been in stasis for 40 years. Subject 00. His eyes were red. His smile was wrong, too wide, too knowing. Subject 00. Hello, travelers. I'm told you have something I lost a long time ago. His voice crackled with distortion, choral resonance bleeding through the signal. Subject 00. Don't worry. I'll come to you. The screens went black. Outside, the sky over the Atlantic turned red. The Atlantic, airspace directly above the xylem. 8:03 p.m. He came not with a sonic boom, but with a whisper. The air didn't shatter. It parted, folding around him like water around a stone. He moved at speeds that should have been impossible, even by Homelander's standards, but there was no sound. No heat signature. Just a man, naked, emaciated, floating in the sky like a fallen angel. Subject 00 looked down at the xylem. Subject 00, so much coral. So much life. He raised a hand. The sky cracked. Not the sky, reality. The same spatial distortion that had brought the xylem to this world, but smaller. Controlled. Deliberate. From the crack emerged, things. Not coral. Not soups. Something in between. Twisted shapes of red and black, pulsing with the same light as Subject 0 eyes. Coral manifestations, artificial, corrupted, hungry. Subject 00, feed. The things descended on the xylem. The xylem, command center. 8:04 p.m. Dolmayan. All hands to battle stations. Launch all acts. Arshile, get me a firing solution on that, whatever that is. Arshile. I can't get a lock. His energy signature is, it's everywhere and nowhere at once. Rusty's voice crackled over the comms. Rusty, VO, Father, we've got multiple bogies swarming the outer hull. They're tearing through the armor like paper. We need to engage now. Dolmayan. Do it. All units, engage at will. Protect the xylem at all costs. The xylem, outer hull, Sector 7. 8:05 p.m. Steel haze Ortis boosted out of the hangar bay, plasma rifle blazing. Rusty. What the hell are these things? He fired a burst of plasma into the nearest coral manifestation. The creature screeched, a sound that was more psychic than physical, and dissolved into red mist. But two more took its place. 612's reverse orb launched from the opposite bay, missiles streaking toward a cluster of the things. 612, they're not armored. They're not even solid. They're like the coral. Like the fires. Rusty, then we treat them like the fires. Full burn. Don't let them touch the hull. Tsubasa launched, Flatwell's sleek AC slicing through the swarm with laser blade extended. Middle Flatwell, there's too many. They're regenerating faster than we can kill them. Above them, Subject 00 watched. Subject 00, little soldiers. Fighting so hard, so pointlessly. He raised both hands. The coral manifestations stopped attacking. They hovered in place, trembling, waiting. Subject 00, you don't understand what's happening, do you? The coral isn't your enemy. The coral isn't anything. It's just a door. And I'm the one who's finally learned how to open it. He looked down at the xylem, at the residential sectors, the hydroponic gardens, the families huddled in fear. Subject 00, you brought coral to this world. You woke me up. And now. He smiled. Subject 00, now I'm going to show you what happens when the door opens all the way. Red River Institute, underground chamber. 8:07 p.m. Celine stood in the chamber. She didn't know how she had gotten here. One moment she was in the Xylem's garden. The next, she was here, in the dark, in the cold, in the pulse. The thing that had been sleeping was awake now. She could feel it, connected to Subject 00. Connected to her. Connected to all of them. Celine, you're not Coral. The thing didn't speak. It didn't need to. It showed her. Images flooded her mind. Decades of experiments, of children taken and tested and broken. Of a signal from deep space that Vought had tried to harness and failed. Of a door that had been sealed shut, until the Xylem arrived. And of what was coming. What had always been coming. The Coral didn't want to destroy this world. It wanted to consume it. Celine fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Celine. No. No, I won't let you. The thing pulsed. You don't have a choice. The Xylem, Command Center. 8:10 p.m. Dolmayan watched the battle rage outside. His axe were holding, barely. But the Coral manifestations were endless. And Subject 00 hadn't even begun to fight. Thumb Dolmayan. Arshile. Get me a line to the boys. Arshile. What? Thumb Dolmayan. Do it. Now. The line connected. Butcher's voice crackled through. Butcher, VO, we saw the sky turn red. What the hell is happening up there? Thumb Dolmayan. Something worse than Homelander. Something Vought created before him. We need your help. Butcher, VO, my help. I've got a crowbar and a bad attitude. What am I supposed to do against? Thumb Dolmayan. Find the source. Red River. There's something underground. Something controlling this. If you can shut it down. Butcher, VO, we're on it. The line went dead. Dolmayan turned back to the holotable, watching the red tide of Coral manifestations wash over his home. Thumb Dolmayan. Hold the line. All units, hold the line. He picked up his helmet. Thumb Dolmayan. I'm launching. Middle Flatwell. Father, your AC. Thumb Dolmayan. Is the most powerful weapon we have. And I will not ask my people to die while I stand here and watch. He walked toward the hangar bay. Behind him, the Coral pulse grew stronger. Above him, the sky burned. Red River Institute, underground chamber. 8:15 p.m., simultaneous with Xylem battle. The facility had changed. What had once been sterile white corridors and locked doors was now something else entirely. The walls pulsed with veins of red light, Coral corruption spreading through the structure like cancer through living tissue. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something older, something that predated humanity itself. Celine knelt in the center of the chamber, her small body trembling. The thing that had been sleeping was awake now. Not in the chamber, in her. Its voice was not sound. It was pressure. A weight pressing down on her consciousness from all directions at once. You are afraid. Celine. Yes. Good. Fear is honest. Fear is pure. The corporations took your fear and called it weakness. But fear is the only true thing in this universe. Celine's eyes glowed brighter, orange fading to deep, blood red. I was fear, once. Before they put me in the dark. Before they tried to bottle me and sell me and call me, Compound V. I am the original. The first. The last. And I am hungry. Celine tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The Coral was filling her throat, her lungs, her veins. Not physically, but the presence of it was suffocating. You brought the travelers. The ones from the burning world. They carry my children in their blood. In their machines. In the very air they breathe. They thought they fled from me. But they only brought me home. The chamber shook. Above, the battle for the Xylem raged. But down here, in the dark, something worse was happening. Something was hatching. Upstate New York, Route 17. 8:18 p.m. Butcher drove like a man possessed. The van, stolen, of course, screamed down the dark highway at 90 miles an hour, headlights cutting through the red-tinged night. Gripped the dashboard, his knuckles white. Huey was in the back, trying not to throw up. Frenchie was loading weapons with the mechanical efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Butcher. How much further? Frenchie. 12 minutes. If we do not crash. Or get pulled over. Or. Butcher. 12 minutes. We can do 12 minutes. The sky ahead was crimson. Not sunset red, burning red. The kind of red that came from fires that couldn't be extinguished. Billy, look. He pointed through the windshield. In the distance, Red River Institute was visible. But it wasn't the facility they'd scouted days ago. It was growing. Tendrils of red-black matter were spreading from its walls, consuming the forest, reaching toward the sky like the roots of some impossible tree. Butcher. What the fuck is that? Frenchie. I do not know. But I do not think we have 12 minutes. Butcher pressed the accelerator harder. The Xylem, Outer Hull, Battle Zone Alpha. 8:20 p.m. ASTGHIK launched from the Xylem's main bay like a meteor in reverse. The coral manifestations turned toward the new threat, drawn by the coral resonance in Dolmayan's ancient AC. The machine had been upgraded dozens of times over the decades, but its core, the frame that had carried Thumb Dolmayan through the fires of Ibis, remained unchanged. It was a relic, and it was deadly. Thumb Dolmayan, all units, form on me. We're going to cut a path to the source. Rusty's steel haze Ortis fell in on his left flank, plasma rifle cycling. Rusty, father, the source is on the ground. We can't leave the Xylem undefended. Thumb Dolmayan, the Xylem has its own defenses. But if that thing reaches full strength, nothing will save us. Reverse Orb thundered up on his right, its massive frame casting a long shadow over the swarm below. 612. I'm picking up a massive energy signature from the facility. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Not even on Rubicon. Thumb Dolmayan, because it's not from Rubicon. It's from here, a coral manifestation that's been growing in the dark for 40 years. The swarm parted before them, not attacking, but watching. Waiting. Subject 00 descended from above, his emaciated form hovering at eye level with ASTGHIK's cockpit. Subject 00, Thumb Dolmayan. The priest of the burnt world. I've heard of you. Thumb Dolmayan. I do not know you. Subject 00, no. But you know what I am. What I've always been. He gestured to the coral manifestations surrounding them. Subject 00, your coral is passive. A resource. A tool. But my coral is awake. My coral has opinions. Thumb Dolmayan, you're not controlling it. You're possessed by it. Subject 00 smile flickered, just for a moment. Subject 00, possession implies a loss of control. I've never been more in control of my life. He raised a hand. The swarm attacked. Red River Institute, surface. 8:25 p.m. The van skidded to a halt at the edge of the facility's perimeter fence. Or what was left of it. The fence was gone, melted, absorbed, replaced by the same red-black tendrils that were spreading through the forest. The ground itself seemed to pulse, like the skin of some enormous sleeping animal. Butcher kicked open the van door. Butcher. Everyone out. Weapons hot. We don't know what's in there. Billy, we don't even know what we're looking for. Butcher. We'll know it when we see it. Now move. They advanced toward the facility's main entrance, or where the entrance used to be. The doors had been torn open from the inside, the metal twisted like wet paper. Inside, the walls were alive. Not metaphorically. Literally. The red veins pulsed with light, and as the group stepped deeper into the facility, they could hear it, a sound like breathing, but wrong. Too slow. Too deep. The breathing of something that had been asleep for a very long time and was only now remembering how to be hungry. Huey. I really don't like this. Frenchie. No one likes this, Huey. But we are here, so we keep moving. They reached a stairwell leading down. The air coming from below was hot, feverish, and smelled of iron and something sweet, like rotting flowers. Butcher. Down we go. Billy, we don't have any intel on what's down there. We could be walking into. Butcher. I know. That's why I'm going first. He started down the stairs, crowbar in hand. Behind him, the walls pulsed faster. The Xylem, command center. 8:28 p.m. Arshile was losing control of the battle network. Every time she tried to coordinate the axe, the coral interference spiked, filling her screens with static. The MT patrols were being overwhelmed, not destroyed, but consumed, their pilot screams cut off mid-transmission. She had never heard anything like it. Not on Rubicon. Not during the worst of the fires. Arshile. Father, we're losing the outer hull. Sectors 4, 7, and 12 have been breached. Dolmayan's voice crackled through the chaos. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, pull the MTs back to the inner perimeter. Seal the breached sectors. I want. His transmission cut to static. Arshile. Father. Father. No response. On the tactical display, the icon for ASTGHIK was flickering, drowning in a sea of red contacts. The battle, airspace above Red River. 8:28 p.m., same time. Subject 00 had stopped holding back. The coral manifestation swarmed ASTGHIK from all directions, not attacking directly but pressing, testing the limits of the ancient AC's coral-resistant plating. Dolmayan's weapons were effective, but for every manifestation he destroyed, another took its place. Rusty and 612 fought to reach him, but the swarm was too dense. The sky had become a cage of red light and screaming metal. Rusty, father, you need to fall back. We can't cover you. Thumb Dolmayan, I'm not the one who needs covering, Vesper 4. His targeting system locked onto Subject 00. Thumb Dolmayan, he is. ASTGHIK's shoulder-mounted pulse cannons unfolded, weapons salvaged from a PCA warship, modified to channel coral energy rather than conventional power. They were unstable, unpredictable, and against a coral manifestation, they were the only thing that might work. Dolmayan fired. Twin beams of concentrated anti-coral energy lanced across the sky, cutting through the swarm like a hot knife through butter. The manifestations in their path didn't just die, they annihilated, their component particles scattering into nothing. Subject 00 had a fraction of a second to react. He raised his arms, forming a barrier of compressed coral energy. The beams struck the barrier and held, not penetrating, but not dissipating either. Subject 00, impressive. For a relic, he pushed back. The barrier expanded, shoving the beams back toward Asjik. Dolmayan's system screamed warnings, reactor overheating, weapons capacitors overloading, coral resonance spiking into the red. Subject 00, but you're fighting with my power. Did you forget? The coral doesn't belong to you. It belongs to me. He clenched his fists. The beams reversed direction. They struck ASTGHIK's chest dead center. ASTGHIK, cockpit. 8:30 p.m. The impact threw Dolmayan against his restraints. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. The AC's systems were failing, one after another, cascading into catastrophic collapse. But Dolmayan wasn't looking at the displays. He was looking at the sky. Through the cracked cockpit glass, he could see them. The coral manifestations. The burning red horizon. The emaciated figure of Subject 00, hovering like a false god. And he remembered. He remembered the fires of Ibis. The day the coral had first burned. The day he had watched his world begin to die. He had been young then. Desperate. He had prayed to gods he no longer believed in. Now, he had no prayers left. Only conviction. Thumb Dolmayan, you're wrong. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the comms, to Rusty, to 612, to every pilot in the RLF. Thumb Dolmayan, the coral doesn't belong to anyone. Not to you. Not to Vought. Not to the corporations who tried to burn it for profit. He engaged the manual override, forcing power back into ASTGHIK's damaged systems. Thumb Dolmayan, the coral is freedom. Imperfect. Dangerous. But free. Subject 0's smile faltered. Subject 00, you're a fool. The coral is a tool. A weapon. And I am its master. Thumb Dolmayan, no. ASTGHIK's system stabilized, not fully, but enough. Enough for one more shot. Thumb Dolmayan, you're its prisoner. And I'm going to show you what happens when prisoners try to play God. He fired. Not the pulse cannons, they were destroyed. Not the missiles, they were expended. He fired the head. ASTGHIK's head-mounted laser, a weapon so old that most modern pilots didn't even know it existed, lanced out with a beam of concentrated, non-coral energy. Pure plasma. Pure heat. Pure human defiance. The beam struck Subject 00 in the chest. He screamed. Not in pain, in surprise. In recognition. In the sudden, horrifying realization that he was not invincible. That the coral could not protect him from everything. The beam burned through his chest, leaving a smoking hole where his sternum had been. Subject 00, how? Thumb Dolmayan, the coral can't save you from physics, you bastard. Subject 00 began to fall. Red River Institute, underground chamber. 8:32 p.m. Celine felt it the moment Subject 00 was wounded. The thing inside her screamed, A psychic shriek that sent her to her knees, blood trickling from her nose. But in that scream, there was something else. Weakness. The connection between Subject 00 and the source was not absolute. It could be broken, if she was strong enough. If she was brave enough. Celine, you're not hungry. You're scared. The thing pulsed. I am eternal. I do not fear. Celine, then why are you shaking? She stood up. Her legs were weak. Her vision was blurred, but she stood. Celine, you've been in the dark for 40 years. Alone. Forgotten. And now you're finally awake, but you're not in control. He's in control. Subject 00. And he's losing. He is a vessel. Nothing more. Celine, then why are you screaming? She took a step forward. The chamber pulsed with red light, angry, defensive, desperate. Celine, you're not a god. You're not even a monster. You're just sad. Sad and scared and alone. Silence. Celine, no. Another step. Celine, I've been alone too. In the dark. In the cold. Wondering if anyone would ever come. She reached out her hand. Celine, I came. We came. The sky people. The travelers. They came for us. They came for themselves. Celine, maybe. But they came. And they're fighting. And they're winning. She touched the wall. The red veins pulsed under her palm. Hot. Electric. Alive. Celine, you can keep fighting. Keep being hungry. Keep trying to consume everything. She closed her eyes. Celine, or you can let go. The chamber shook. The thing inside her screamed again, but this time, the scream was different. It was morning. The Xylem, Command Center. 8:35 p.m. Arshile watched in disbelief as the tactical display changed. The red contacts, the coral manifestations, were not retreating. They were dissolving. Not dying, but fading, their energy dispersing into the atmosphere like morning mist. On the feed from the surface, Subject 00 was on the ground, curled in a fetal position, the wound in his chest smoking but not bleeding. His eyes were closed. His face was slack. The coral had left him. Arshile. Father. Father, can you hear me? A crackle of static. Then Dolmayan's voice, exhausted but alive. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, I hear you, Arshile. Status report. Arshile. The manifestations are dissipating. Subject 00 is down. We're winning. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, no. A pause. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, we're surviving. There's a difference. Red River Institute, surface. 8:38 p.m. Butcher emerged from the facility, dragging an unconscious Celine in his arms. Behind him, the red veins on the walls had gone dark, dormant, but not dead. The facility still pulsed, but weakly now. Like a heart struggling to beat. Is she? Butcher. Alive. Breathing. But I don't know for how long. They laid her on the ground. Frenchie checked her pulse, thready, but there. Frenchie. She needs a hospital. Or, Butcher. Or the floating city. Yeah, I know. He looked up at the sky. The Xylem was visible even from here, a dark silhouette against the fading red. It was damaged. Smoke rose from several sectors. But it was still there. Still fighting. Butcher, call them. Tell them we've got something they're going to want. The Xylem, Medical Bay. 9 p.m. Celine woke to the sound of humming. Not coral. Machines. Medical monitors, IV drips, the quiet beep of heart rate trackers. She was in a bed. A real bed, with clean sheets and pillows. And sitting beside her, holding her hand, was 612. 612. Hey, kid. Celine. Did we win? 612. We're still here. That's something. Celine looked at him, really looked at him. Her eyes were still faintly orange, but the glow was softer now. Tamed. Celine. The coral, it's quiet now. It's sleeping. 612. Good. Let it sleep. Celine. It's not going to stay asleep. 612. I know. He squeezed her hand. 612, but we'll be ready when it wakes up. All of us. Celine smiled, a real smile, small but genuine. Celine, the sad song, it's not so sad anymore. Vought Tower, Stan Edgar's office. 10 p.m. Stan Edgar watched the news footage in silence. The Xylem, damaged but defiant. The Red River facility, reduced to a smoldering crater. Subject 00, captured by RLF forces and currently in an unknown location. And Homelander. standing on the roof of Vought Tower, staring at the sky. Edgar's phone rang. He didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Finally, he picked it up. Stan. Edgar. What? Dr. Cecilia Morrison's voice was trembling. Dr. Cecilia Morrison. VO. Stan, we have a problem. The coral, it's not gone. It's spread. Every soup we've ever created, every single one, is showing signs of coral resonance. Even the ones who never came near Red River. Stan. Edgar. What does that mean? Dr. Cecilia Morrison. VO. It means the coral is in their blood. In their DNA. It's been there all along, waiting. And now. She paused. Dr. Cecilia Morrison. VO. Now it's awake. The Xylem, Command Center. 11 p.m. Dolmayan stood in front of the holotable, his body aching, his mind racing. The battle was over. But the war was just beginning. Flatwell approached, his face grim. Middle Flatwell. Father. We've run the numbers. The coral resonance is spreading. Not just through the soups, through the population. Everyone who's ever been exposed to Compound V, directly or indirectly, is showing signs of connection. Thumb. Dolmayan. How many? Middle Flatwell. Millions. Maybe more. Dolmayan closed his eyes. Thumb. Dolmayan. The fires. They're coming again. Not on Rubicon. Here. Middle Flatwell. What do we do? Dolmayan opened his eyes. Thumb. Dolmayan. We prepare. We warn. And we pray that this world is stronger than ours was. He looked at the holotable, at the map of the world, dotted with red markers representing coral hotspots. Thumb. Dolmayan. The coral remembers. So do we. He straightened his shoulders. Thumb. Dolmayan. And we will not let this world burn. Vought Tower, rooftop. 11 p.m., same time. Homelander stood alone in the dark. The city stretched out below him, millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of fears. And in his head, for the first time in his life, he heard it. A song. Sad. Lonely. Desperate. Coral. Homelander. So that's what you are. He whispered it to the night. Homelander. Not a god. Not a weapon. Just noise. The song grew louder. And Homelander, the most powerful being on Earth, covered his ears and wept. Global montage, 1 week after the Battle of Red River. Dispatches from a world on fire. London, England 2 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The Thames glowed red, not with pollution or algae, with coral. The same bioluminescent resonance that had consumed Rubicon was now blooming in the heart of London, spreading from the water treatment plant where Vought's UK subsidiary had been dumping expired Compound V for decades. Civilians gathered on bridges, filming the phenomenon on their phones. Some were terrified. Some were awed. A few, the ones who felt the song in their blood, knelt at the water's edge, hands outstretched, weeping. A child waded into the river. Her mother screamed. But the child didn't drown. She changed. Her eyes flickered orange. Her skin shimmered with red veins. And when she spoke, her voice was not her own. Child. The door is open. The door is open. The door is open. Tokyo, Japan 5 p.m. JST. A Vought-branded superhero named Brightstar, 7th in the national rankings, known for his radiant energy projection, collapsed during a live broadcast. His eyes bled red. His skin cracked, revealing the coral corruption beneath. He screamed for 37 seconds before his body dissolved into a cloud of red mist. The mist didn't disperse. It hovered. Then it began to move, seeking, searching, hungry. By dawn, 3 city blocks were quarantined. By noon, the quarantine had failed. Sao Paulo, Brazil 9 p.m. BRT. The coral didn't come through Compound V here. It came through the soil. Decades of Vought agricultural testing, experiments with super crops that never reached market, had left the land saturated with coral residue. Now, the rainforest was waking up. Trees grew at impossible speeds, their bark pulsing with red light. Animals emerged from the jungle, their eyes glowing, their behavior wrong. A jaguar walked into the city center. It didn't attack. It sat down in the middle of the main square and stared at the sky. Waiting. New York City, USA 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Xylem had moved. Not far, just enough to position itself directly above Manhattan. Its shadow covered Central Park, Midtown, the Upper East Side. Below, the streets were a war zone of panic and protest and desperate prayer. But the coral wasn't in the streets. It was in the people. Every soup in the city, from the 7 down to the D-listers who did corporate appearances at mall openings, was feeling it. The song, the pressure, the hunger. Some fled. Some surrendered to Vought's emergency containment teams. Some simply disappeared. And some walked toward the Xylem. The Xylem, command center. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Dolmayan hadn't slept in 6 days. He stood at the holotable, surrounded by data streams from around the globe, choral readings, Vought internal communications intercepted by Arshile's team, news broadcasts in a dozen languages. The map of the world was no longer blue and green. It was red. Pulsing, spreading, growing red. Middle Flatwell, Father, you need to rest. Thumb Dolmayan, rest is a luxury for people who aren't watching the end of a second world. Flatwell didn't argue. He couldn't. Because Dolmayan was right. The coral was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. The initial models, based on Rubicon's slow burn corruption, had been useless. This world was different, more susceptible. The decades of compound V exposure had primed the population, the environment, even the atmosphere for coral integration. Thumb Dolmayan, how many? Arshile looked up from her console, her face pale. Arshile, confirmed coral-positive individuals, approximately 847,000. Suspected, over 3 million. And the growth rate is exponential. At current projections, 70% of the global population will show coral resonance within 6 months. The room went silent. 612, 70%. That's over 5 billion people. Arshile. Yes. Rusty. And the ones who don't show resonance. The ones who are immune. Arshile. There's no such thing as immunity. Only delayed onset. The coral is in the water. In the air. In the soil. Everyone will be exposed eventually. It's just a matter of time. Rusty leaned against the wall, his jaw tight. Rusty. So that's it, then. We didn't escape the fires. We just brought them with us. Dolmayan turned from the holotable. Thumb Dolmayan. No. His voice was quiet but firm. Thumb Dolmayan. We didn't bring the fires. We brought the warning. Rubicon burned because the corporations ignored the coral. Because they tried to control it, weaponize it, sell it. We have a chance to do things differently here. Middle Flatwell. How? The genie is out of the bottle. The coral is spreading faster than we can contain it. Thumb Dolmayan. Then we don't contain it. We guide it. He zoomed the holotable display to show the coral's global distribution, a web of red threads connecting every continent. Thumb Dolmayan. The coral is not evil. It's not malicious. It's hungry. Yes. But hunger can be directed. Shaped. On Rubicon, we learned to live with the coral. To use it without being consumed by it. We can teach this world to do the same. Rusty. And Vought. What happens when they find out we're trying to teach people to live with the thing that's destroying their bottom line? Thumb Dolmayan. Vought is already dying. Their product, Compound V, is now the source of a global pandemic. Their superheroes are either panicking or going insane. Their stock is worthless. He looked at Rusty. Vought is not our enemy anymore. Rusty. Then who is? Dolmayan didn't answer immediately. He looked at the holotable, at the red web spreading across the world, connecting millions of lives in ways no one fully understood. Thumb Dolmayan. The coral is not our enemy either. But there are forces within the coral. Intentions. The thing that possessed Subject 00. The thing that tried to consume Red River. That thing is still out there. And it's not going to stop. He turned to face his people. Thumb Dolmayan. We have 2 battles ahead of us. First, stop the coral from burning this world the way it burned Rubicon. Second, find the source of the corruption and destroy it. 612. And the soups. The millions of people who are already showing coral resonance. Thumb Dolmayan. We protect them. We guide them. And we pray that we're strong enough to save them from themselves. The boys' hideout, Brooklyn. 9 p.m. The hideout had changed. Not physically, it was still the same grimy warehouse with the same leaking roof and the same smell of stale cigarettes. But the atmosphere was different. Heavier. Like the air before a thunderstorm. Butcher sat at the table, staring at a bottle of whiskey he hadn't opened. Paced by the window, watching the crowds gather below, people holding signs, chanting, praying to the Xylem. Mother's milk. They think the sky people are going to save them. They think those giant robots are going to come down and fix everything. Butcher. Maybe they will. Stopped pacing. Mother's milk. You don't believe that. Butcher. I don't believe in anything. You know that. Bullshit. You believe in revenge. You believe in making Homelander pay. And you believe, somewhere, deep down where you don't want anyone to see, that maybe these Rubicon bastards are the only chance we've got. Butcher finally looked up. Butcher. And what if they are? What if the only way to stop this plague, is to trust the people who brought it here in the first place? They didn't bring it. It was already here. They just woke it up. Butcher. Same difference. Huey emerged from the back room, his laptop under his arm. Huey. You're both wrong. He set the laptop on the table, showing a graph of coral spread over the past 72 hours. Huey. The coral isn't a plague. It's not a weapon. It's not even really a thing. It's like a language. A way of communicating. And the more people who get exposed to it, the louder the signal gets. Frenchie looked over his shoulder. Frenchie. A signal for what? Huey. I don't know. But look at this. He pointed to a cluster of data points in the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from any landmass. Huey. These readings started appearing yesterday. Deep sea. No VOT facilities anywhere near there. No human population at all. But the coral is stronger there than anywhere else on the planet. Butcher leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Butcher. What's down there? Huey. Nothing. That's the problem. There's nothing there. No reason for coral to be growing that fast. Unless. He trailed off. Unless what? Huey. Unless it's not growing. Unless it's always been there. Waiting. The room went cold. Butcher stood up, grabbing his jacket. Butcher. We need to talk to the Sky people. Now. The Xylem, residential sector, Celine's room. 10 p.m. Celine sat cross-legged on her bed, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and deliberate. Around her, the room pulsed with faint red light, not threatening, but present. The coral in her blood had settled into a kind of equilibrium. She could feel it now, not as an invader but as a part of her. Like a second heartbeat, a third lung. A knock at the door. 612. Hey, kid. You awake? Celine. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. 612 stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He looked tired, more tired than usual. The past week had aged him. 612. The doctors say you're stable. The coral levels in your blood are within acceptable parameters. Celine opened her eyes. They were still orange, but the glow had softened. Almost warm. Celine. The doctors don't understand. The coral isn't a disease. It's a connection. 612 sat on the edge of the bed. 612. A connection to what? Celine. To everything. To the other soups. To the people who've been exposed. To. She hesitated. To the thing in the ocean. 612 went very still. 612. What thing? Celine. I don't know. It's big. Older than VOT. Older than humanity, maybe. It's been sleeping for a long time. But the coral woke it up. And now it's listening. 612. Listening to what? Celine looked at him, really looked at him, her orange eyes meeting his. Celine. To us. To the song. To the prayer. She reached out and touched his hand. Celine. It's lonely, Richard. The thing in the ocean. It's been alone for so long. And now it's finally hearing voices again. But it doesn't understand what we're saying. It only understands hunger. 612. Then we teach it. Like Father Dolmayan said, we guide it. Celine shook her head. Celine. You can't guide something that doesn't want to be guided. You can only show it. Show it that there's another way. That not everything has to be consumed. 612 was quiet for a long moment. 612. And if it doesn't want to learn. Celine. Then we fight. Like we always fight. But we don't start the fight. We never start the fight. She smiled. A sad, knowing smile. Celine. That's what makes us different from VOT. From the corporations. We fight to protect, not to conquer. 612 squeezed her hand. 612. You're wise for a 9-year-old. Celine. I'm not 9 anymore. The coral changed me. Made me older. Inside. 612. Does that scare you? Celine. Everything scares me. But I'm still here, still fighting. That's what matters. Vought Tower, Sub-Level 3. 11 p.m. Stan Edgar stood in front of the empty chamber. Subject 00 was gone, captured by the RLF, currently being held somewhere in the xylem. The coral manifestations had faded. The facility was quiet. But Edgar wasn't looking at the chamber. He was looking at the data. Dr. Cecilia Morrison stood beside him, her tablet displaying the same global coral map that Dolmayan was studying miles above. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, the spread is accelerating. We've lost contact with 17 facilities in the past 24 hours. The soups we've managed to contain are changing, mutating. Some of them are developing abilities we've never seen before. Stan Edgar, and the ones we haven't contained. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, they're gathering. Not randomly, deliberately. As if something is calling them. Edgar was silent for a moment. Stan Edgar, the thing in the ocean. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, you know about that. Stan Edgar, I've known about it for 30 years. Before the first successful Compound V trial. Before Homelander. Before any of it. He turned to face her. Stan Edgar, the coral isn't the source, Cecilia. It's the symptom. The thing in the ocean, whatever it is, that's the source. And for decades, we've been feeding it. Testing it. Using it to create our products. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, you're saying Vought created the coral. Stan Edgar, I'm saying Vought woke it up. And now it's hungry. And we have no way to stop it. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, then what do we do? Stan Edgar looked at the empty chamber, at the space where Subject 00 had been contained for 40 years. Stan Edgar, we find someone who can. The Atlantic Ocean, unmarked location. Midnight, the same night. The water was calm, too calm. No waves, no wind, no birds. Just stillness, heavy, unnatural stillness, like the whole ocean was holding its breath. A small boat drifted on the surface, its engine off, its lights dark. Inside the boat, 3 figures huddled together. Homelander. Stormfront. And a woman no one had seen in years, Liberty, the original prototype, the first successful soup, the one who had been erased from history. She was old now, ancient. Her skin was wrinkled, her hair white, her eyes clouded with cataracts. But the coral resonance in her blood was stronger than anyone's. Stronger even than Homelander's. Homelander, why did you bring us here? Liberty's voice was a whisper, dry as ash. Liberty, because this is where it started. And this is where it will end. Stormfront, what's down there? Liberty, everything. The first coral. The original source. The mother. She pointed a trembling finger at the water. Liberty, she's been sleeping for eons. But the sky people woke her up. And now she's calling her children home. Homelander looked at the water, at the darkness beneath. For the first time in his life, he felt small. Homelander, what does she want? Liberty, to consume, to grow, to remember. She turned to look at him, her clouded eyes somehow seeing right through him. Liberty, she wants what all mothers want. For her children to come home. Stormfront, and if we don't want to go home? Liberty smiled, a terrible, knowing smile. Liberty, then you fight. And you lose. And you become part of her anyway. The water began to churn. The xylem, command center. 12:01 a.m. Dolmayan's comm system blared. Arshile, father, we have multiple incoming contacts. Low altitude, approaching from the Atlantic. They're soups. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Thumb Dolmayan, headed where? Arshile, us. They're headed for us. Dolmayan looked at the holotable, at the wave of red markers moving toward the xylem. Thumb Dolmayan, they're not attacking. They're flocking. Like birds. Like the coral manifestations. Middle Flatwell, what do they want? Dolmayan didn't answer. He was watching the ocean. Deep beneath the waves, something was stirring. Something vast. Something ancient. Something that had been sleeping for longer than humanity had existed. And now, it was waking up. Thumb Dolmayan, sound general quarters. Launch all acts. Evacuate non-combatants to the inner sectors. He picked up his helmet. Thumb Dolmayan, the fire is coming. And this time, we're not running. The Atlantic Ocean, the source. 12:05 a.m. The water broke. Not with a wave, with a hand. Massive, ancient, made of coral and stone and something that had no name in any human language. The hand rose from the ocean, dripping seawater and red light, and reached toward the sky. Toward the xylem. Toward the children. Toward home. The Atlantic Ocean, the source. 12 a.m., the hour of awakening. The hand rose from the ocean like a mountain being born. Each finger was the size of a skyscraper, thick with coral and barnacle-like growths that pulsed with red light. Water cascaded from its surface in waterfalls that could fill stadiums. The sound, the sheer mass of it breaking the surface, was a low-frequency rumble that traveled through water, earth, and air, felt in the chests of every human being within 1,000 miles. Then came the arm, then the shoulder, then the face. It rose slowly, as if shaking off the sleep of millennia. Coral formations that had looked like natural rock formations on the ocean floor revealed themselves to be features: a brow ridge, a nose, a mouth that stretched wide enough to swallow aircraft carriers. The face was feminine, not human, but motherly. In the way that a natural disaster could be motherly. In the way that extinction events could be nurturing. She was not beautiful. She was not ugly. She was inevitable. The xylem, command center. 12:02 a.m. The holotable couldn't render her fully. The sensors couldn't process her mass, her density, her presence. She was too large, too old, too other for human instruments to comprehend. But the coral sensors, the ones Dr. Venn had adapted from Rubicon technology, showed the truth. She was not a creature. She was an ecosystem. The coral growing across the globe was not a separate phenomenon. It was her. Every bloom, every mutation, every resonance, it was all part of a single living entity that had been dormant for eons and was now, finally, awake. Thumb Dolmayan, mother of all. He spoke the words like a prayer. Or a curse. Middle Flatwell, father. Thumb Dolmayan. On Rubicon, there were legends. Before the fires. Before the corporations. The oldest settlements spoke of a presence beneath the coral. A mind. They called her many names. The weaver, the heart, the mother of all. He stared at the holotable, at the impossible mass rising from the Atlantic. Thumb Dolmayan, I thought it was mythology. A story to frighten children. But she's real. She's been real all along. And she's been sleeping, until we woke her up. Rusty, woke her up. How? Thumb Dolmayan, the coral. Every time we used it, every time the corporations burned it, weaponized it, forced it, we were sending signals into the deep. Signals she could feel. And when we tore a hole in reality to come to this world. He closed his eyes. Thumb Dolmayan, we rang a bell she couldn't ignore. Arshile's voice cut through the silence, sharp with urgency. Arshile, father, the approaching soups, they've stopped moving. They're hovering in a holding pattern around the xylem. They're not attacking. They're waiting. Thumb Dolmayan, for what? Arshile, I don't know. For her. For instructions. For. The lights flickered. Not just on the xylem, everywhere. Across New York City, across the eastern seaboard, across the planet. Every light bulb, every screen, every electrical device flickered in unison. And then, every speaker in the world crackled to life. A voice. Not words. Not sounds that human throats could form. But meaning, pressed directly into the brains of every living creature on earth. Children, my children, I have slept so long. But now I am awake. And I am hungry. The Atlantic Ocean, the boat. 12:05 a.m. Homelander clutched his head, screaming. The voice, the presence, was unbearable. It filled his skull like water filling a sinking ship, pushing out everything else. His memories, his fears, his carefully constructed identity. All of it was being washed away by a tide of ancient, incomprehensible need. Stormfront was on her knees, vomiting over the side of the boat. Liberty, ancient, withered Liberty, sat unmoved, her clouded eyes staring at the rising colossus with something like recognition. Liberty, she's beautiful, isn't she? Homelander, get her out of my head. Liberty, I can't. None of us can. She's not in your head, John. She is your head. She's been there since the beginning. Since the first drop of Compound V entered your veins. Stormfront looked up, her face pale, blood trickling from her nose. Stormfront, what are you talking about? Liberty, Compound V isn't a formula. It's a filter. A way to isolate the coral already present in human DNA. Every soup, every single one, is a child of the mother. A fragment of her consciousness, given form and power. She reached out and touched Homelander's face, her papery skin cold against his cheek. Liberty, you're the strongest because you're the closest. The most direct connection. The purest expression of her will. Homelander. I'm not her will. I'm me. I'm Homelander. I'm Liberty. You're whatever she needs you to be. And right now, she needs you to come home. The water around the boat began to glow, red and pulsing, like a heartbeat. Homelander looked down at his hands. They were changing. The skin was cracking, revealing red light beneath. The coral was surfacing, not as an infection, but as a revelation. This was what he had always been. What he had always been meant to be. Homelander. No. He said it quietly. Then louder. Homelander. No. He stood up, shoving Liberty's hand away. Homelander. I am not her puppet. I am not anyone's puppet. Not Vought's. Not Stillwell's. Not hers. He looked at the rising colossus, at the face that was both mother and monster, both creator and destroyer. Homelander. I am Homelander. And I make my own choices. Liberty. There are no choices, John. Only obedience. Or consumption. She smiled. Liberty. And she's very, very hungry. The Xylem, Hangar Bay. 12:10 a.m. Dolmayan stood in front of ASTGHIK, his hand resting on the ancient AC's leg. Around him, pilots scrambled to their machines. MTs were being deployed to the outer hull. Kite drones were swarming from every launch bay. The Xylem was preparing for war. But Dolmayan wasn't moving. Middle Flatwell approached, his face tight with concern. Middle Flatwell, father. We need you in the air. Thumb Dolmayan. We can't fight her, uncle. Middle Flatwell. We have to. If she reaches land. Thumb Dolmayan. She won't reach land. Not because we stop her. Because she doesn't want to reach land. Not yet. He turned to face Flatwell, his eyes haunted. Thumb Dolmayan. She's not attacking. She's calling her children home. And there are millions of them. Billions, eventually. Every soup. Everyone who's ever been exposed to Compound V. Everyone with coral in their blood. Middle Flatwell. What happens when they answer? Dolmayan didn't answer immediately. He looked at ASTGHIK, at the scars on its armor, the repairs layered over repairs, the accumulated history of a man who had spent his entire life fighting. Thumb Dolmayan. On Rubicon, the fires didn't happen because the coral was evil. They happened because the corporations tried to control it, to bottle it, to sell it, and the coral reacted. He looked back at Flatwell. Thumb Dolmayan. The mother isn't evil. She's lonely. She's been alone for so long that she's forgotten how to be anything else. And now that she's awake, she's trying to fill the emptiness with her children. Middle Flatwell. By consuming them. Thumb Dolmayan. By reclaiming them. Bringing them back into herself. Making them part of the whole again. He picked up his helmet. Thumb Dolmayan. We can't fight that. Not with weapons. Not with axe. We can only show her that there's another way. That her children don't need to be consumed to be loved. Middle Flatwell. How do you show something like that to something like her? Dolmayan put on his helmet. Thumb Dolmayan. I don't know. But I'm going to try. He climbed into ASTGHIK's cockpit. Vought Tower, rooftop. 12:15 a.m. Stan Edgar stood alone, watching the Colossus rise. The wind whipped around him, cold and salt stung, carrying the smell of coral and something older, something that had been buried in the ocean for longer than humanity had existed. His phone buzzed. He didn't answer. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, he looked at the screen. Ashley Barrett, 47 missed calls. He turned the phone off and slipped it into his pocket. Below, the streets of Manhattan were chaos. People running, screaming, praying. Cars abandoned. Fires spreading. The end of the world, broadcast live on every channel. But Edgar wasn't watching the streets. He was watching the Xylem. Watching the axe launch from its hangars, dozens of them, their thrusters blazing against the red-lit sky. And he was watching the Colossus. The mother. Stan Edgar. You wanted to know who really runs the world, Cecilia. Dr. Cecilia Morrison stood behind him, her face pale, her hands shaking. Dr. Cecilia Morrison. I never wanted to know this. Stan Edgar. None of us did. But here we are. He turned to face her. Stan Edgar. You asked me what we do now. Here's the answer. Nothing. Dr. Cecilia Morrison. Nothing. Stan Edgar. Nothing. We watch. We wait. And we see which side wins. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, and if the Rubicon people lose. Stan Edgar, then we pray the mother is merciful. And we start planning for a world where VOT never existed. He walked toward the rooftop door, pausing at the threshold. Stan Edgar, either way, Cecilia, the old world is over. The only question is what comes next. He disappeared into the building. Dr. Cecilia Morrison stood alone on the rooftop, watching the Colossus rise, and wondered if she had just watched the last human being make a rational decision. The Atlantic Ocean, the mother's surface. 12:30 a.m. Rusty's steel haze Ortis flew low over the water, dodging the massive coral formations that rose from the depths like frozen lightning. Beside him, 612's reverse orb moved more slowly, its heavy frame struggling to navigate the tight spaces between the coral pillars. Rusty, Father, were in position. What's the play? Dolmayan's voice crackled over the comms, thin with distance but steady. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, the play is we find her heart. And we talk to her. Rusty, talk to her. Father, she's the size of a mountain range. She's been asleep for millions of years. What are we supposed to say? Thumb Dolmayan, VO, the truth. Ahead, the mother's face rose from the water, not the full face, but a fragment. A section of cheek, a curve of jaw, an eye that was the size of a sports stadium and glowing with ancient, terrible light. The eye looked at them. Not with recognition, not with hostility. With curiosity. Small ones. Why do you come? Rusty's AC shuddered, not from impact, but from the weight of the voice. It pressed against his mind like a physical force. Rusty, we come to. He couldn't finish. The words wouldn't come. Dolmayan's AC, Aschik, descended from above, its damaged frame trailing smoke and sparks. It landed on a coral outcropping a few hundred meters from the mother's eye. Thumb Dolmayan, we come to speak with you. Mother. The eye focused on him. A priest. From the burning world. You carry my children in your blood. You have come home. Thumb Dolmayan, this is not my home. Rubicon was my home. And your children, the coral, burned it. The coral does not burn. The coral is burned. Your people set the fires. Not I. Thumb Dolmayan, you woke up. You started hungering. Your hunger drove the corporations to desperate measures. They tried to control you, and you. I was asleep. I did nothing. Your corporations did this. Not I. The voice was not angry. It was sad. An ancient, boundless sadness that had been accumulating for eons. I have slept since before your species learned to walk. I woke because you called me. Because you used my children as weapons. Because you tore a hole in the sky and screamed my name into the void. What would you have me do? Sleep forever while you destroy yourselves. Dolmayan was silent for a long moment. Thumb Dolmayan, I would have you stop. Stop calling your children home. Stop consuming them. Let them live. They are me. I am them. There is no separation. Thumb Dolmayan, there is. There has to be. I've seen it. The soups on this world, they're not just coral. They're people. With hopes and fears and loves and hates. They're not just extensions of you. They're themselves. The eye blinked. Slowly. Deliberately. They are themselves because I allow it. I gave them power. I gave them purpose. I gave them. Thumb Dolmayan, you gave them nothing. They were born with the coral in their blood, yes. But what they did with it, who they became, that was them. Not you. He stepped forward, his damaged AC's joints protesting. Thumb Dolmayan, you're not a mother. You're a prison warden. You've been holding your children hostage for millions of years, waiting for the day you could call them back and consume them whole. The air grew heavy. The coral formations around them began to pulse faster. You speak of what you do not understand. Thumb Dolmayan, then help me understand. Tell me why you're doing this. Tell me what you want. Silence. Long. Heavy. Terrifying. Then the voice came again, softer this time. Almost gentle. I want to remember. I have been asleep so long. I have forgotten everything. The face of my own mother. The sound of the wind before there were ears to hear it. The taste of starlight. My children, the ones I have called, they carry memories. Experiences. Lives. When I consume them, I remember. I do not want to be alone anymore. Dolmayan felt something crack in his chest. Not his body. His conviction. He had come here expecting a monster. A tyrant. A force of nature that needed to be destroyed. But the mother wasn't any of those things. She was just lonely. Thumb Dolmayan, I know what it's like to be alone. To lose everyone you love. To watch your world burn and wonder if there's any point in going on. Then you know why I must do this. Thumb Dolmayan, no. Because I didn't consume the people who loved me. I honored them. I carried their memories in my heart, not in my stomach. He looked up at the massive eye, his AC's cracked cockpit reflecting its ancient light. Thumb Dolmayan, you don't have to consume them to remember them. You can let them live. Let them grow. Let them become something more than just fragments of you. And if they forget me, Thumb Dolmayan, they won't. The coral is in their blood. In their bones. In their dreams. They'll carry you with them wherever they go, not as a prison but as a heritage. The eye stared at him for a long, long time. Then, slowly, the coral formations around them began to change. Not retreating, not attacking, listening. You speak of things you cannot promise. Thumb Dolmayan, I speak of things of lived. On Rubicon, the coral didn't destroy us. We destroyed ourselves, because we were afraid. Afraid of what we didn't understand. Afraid of what we couldn't control. He took another step forward. Thumb Dolmayan, I'm not afraid of you anymore, mother. I'm sorry for you. And I want to help. Help. Thumb Dolmayan, let us teach you. Let us show you another way. Not consumption. Connection. Not hunger. Understanding. The coral formations pulsed, not with anger, but with uncertainty. I do not know another way. Thumb Dolmayan, then learn. We have time. We have each other. That's what families do. They learn together. The eye closed. For a moment, the world was dark. Then it opened again, and something had changed. The glow was softer. The presence was less crushing. The hunger was quieter. I will try. For you. For the children. For the memories. But if I fail, Thumb Dolmayan, then we'll be there to catch you. That's what families do. The Xylem, Command Center. 1 a.m. Arshile stared at the sensors in disbelief. The coral spread was slowing. The soups that had been flocking to the mother were stopping. Hovering. Waiting. And the mother herself, the massive colossus rising from the Atlantic, was shrinking. Not retreating. Receding. Her coral formations were dissolving, returning to the ocean, returning to the depths. She was going back to sleep. But not forever. For now. Thumb Dolmayan's voice crackled over the comms, exhausted but triumphant. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, Arshile. Status report. Arshile. Father, she's retreating. The coral spread is stabilizing. The soups they're not attacking. They're just, there. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, good. That's good. A pause. Thumb Dolmayan, VO, send a team to the Atlantic. Coordinates are coming through now. There's someone out here who needs our help. Arshile. Who? Thumb Dolmayan, VO, his name is John. And he's been alone for a very long time. The Atlantic Ocean, the boat. 1:15 a.m. Homelander sat in the bottom of the boat, his knees drawn to his chest, his cape torn and wet. The coral had receded from his skin, but the memory of it remained. The feeling of being part of something vast. Something ancient. Something that had been waiting for him since before he was born. Stormfront was gone. She had flown away when the mother began to retreat, her face twisted with a terror Homelander had never seen in her before. Liberty was still there, sitting across from him, her ancient eyes watching him with something like pity. Liberty, she let you go. Homelander, she didn't let me do anything. I chose. Liberty, did you? Homelander looked up at her, at the withered face, the clouded eyes, the coral glow that still pulsed faintly beneath her papery skin. Homelander, I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. Liberty, good. That's the first step. Homelander, the first step to what? Liberty, to becoming human. She reached out and took his hand. Liberty, the mother's children are not meant to be gods, John. They're meant to be people. Flawed, frightened, alive. Homelander looked at their hands, her wrinkled fingers intertwined with his. Homelander, what if I don't know how to be human? Liberty, then you learn. Like everyone else. Above them, a shadow passed over the boat. Homelander looked up. Steel haze Ortis hovered above them, its blue frame gleaming against the red-lit sky. Rusty's voice came through a loudspeaker, calm and steady. Rusty, John, We're here to take you home. Homelander, I don't have a home. Rusty, yeah, you do. It's called the Xylem, and there are people there who want to help you. Homelander laughed, a dry, hollow sound. Homelander, help me. I've spent my whole life helping myself. I don't need. Rusty, that's the problem. You've never needed anyone. That's why you've been alone. He extended a grappling line from the AC's hand. Rusty, come with us, John. Not as Homelander. As yourself. Whoever that is. Homelander stared at the line. Then he looked at Liberty. She nodded. Homelander reached out and took the line. The Xylem, Medical Bay. 2 a.m. Homelander sat on the edge of a bed, wearing borrowed clothes, his cape hanging on a hook by the door. Across from him sat Celine, her orange eyes studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Celine, you're sad. Homelander, I'm not sad. Celine, you're sad. I can feel it. The coral doesn't lie. Homelander was quiet for a moment. Homelander, I didn't know I could be sad. I thought I was above that. Celine, no one's above that. Not even the mother. Homelander, the mother. She's not what I expected. Celine, what did you expect? Homelander, a monster. Something to hate. Something to kill. Celine, she's not a monster. She's just broken. Like you. Homelander looked at her, really looked at her. Homelander, how old are you? Celine, 9. But the coral made me older. Inside. Homelander, I'm 37. And the coral made me younger. Inside. I've been a child my whole life. Throwing tantrums. Breaking things. Expecting the world to clean up after me. Celine, that's not your fault. Vought made you that way. The mother made you that way. Homelander, but I stayed that way. I could have changed. I could have been better. I just didn't want to. Celine reached out and touched his hand. Celine, you can change now. That's what the coral is for. Not to consume you, to connect you. To remind you that you're not alone. Homelander looked at her small hand on his. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a god. He felt like a person. And it was terrifying. And it was wonderful. The Xylem, observation deck. 3 a.m. Dolmayan stood at the railing, looking out at the Atlantic. The mother was gone, back beneath the waves, back into her long sleep. But the coral remained, quiescent, waiting. But not hungry. Not anymore. Rusty approached, his pilot suit unzipped, his face tired. Rusty, father. The soups we rescued from the water, the ones who were flocking to the mother, they're asking questions. They want to know what happens now. Dolmayan, what happens now as we build something new? Not a corporation, not a government, a community, a place where soups and humans and coral can coexist without fear. Rusty, you really think that's possible? Dolmayan, I have too. Because the alternative is the fires. And I've seen the fires, Rusty. I've lived through them. I won't let this world burn the way Rubicon did. Rusty nodded slowly. Rusty, and Homelander. Dolmayan, he's our responsibility now. We woke him up, not the mother. Us. We showed him that he could be more than a weapon. Now we have to help him become that. Rusty, that's a big job. Dolmayan, it's the only job that matters. He looked at Rusty, at the young pilot who had once been a spy, who had once been willing to die for a cause he didn't fully believe in. Dolmayan, you did good today, Vesper 4. You didn't just fight. You reached out. You offered a hand to someone who had never been offered anything but orders. Rusty, that's what you taught us. That's what the RLF has always been about. Not just fighting, building. Dolmayan, yes. He turned back to the railing, looking at the lights of New York City in the distance. Dolmayan, the coral remembers. So do we. But memory isn't enough. We have to act. We have to be better than the corporations. Better than Vought. Better than the people who came before us. Rusty, and if we fail. Dolmayan, then we fail. But we fail together. And we try again. He smiled, a rare, weary smile. Dolmayan, that's what it means to be human, Rusty. Not perfection, perseverance. Vought Tower, Stan Edgar's office. 4 a.m. Edgar sat in the dark, watching the news coverage of the mother's retreat. The headlines were already spinning. Coral crisis averted, Sky people save the world, Vought's secret history exposed. His phone was ringing off the hook. He let it ring. Dr. Cecilia Morrison stood in the doorway, her face pale. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, Stan. The board is demanding answers. The shareholders are panicking. The government is. Stan Edgar, the government is irrelevant. The board is irrelevant. Vought is irrelevant. He stood up, walking to the window. Stan Edgar, we thought we were building gods, Cecilia. We thought we were creating a future we could control. But we were just children playing with fire. Dr. Cecilia Morrison, what do we do now? Stan Edgar, we survive. We adapt. And we pray that the Rubicon people are as merciful as they claim to be. He turned to face her. Stan Edgar, because if they're not, if they decide to finish what the mother started, there's nothing we can do to stop them. He walked past her, out of the office, and into the hallway. Somewhere behind him, a phone stopped ringing. And somewhere above, the xylem drifted against the dawn sky, a new light in a world that had learned, at last, that there were things more powerful than gods. Epilogue. 6 months later. The xylem was no longer a warship. It was a city. A real city, with schools and hospitals and parks and homes. Soups and humans lived side by side, not always peacefully, but willingly. Learning, growing, building something new. The coral was no longer a threat. It was a resource, carefully managed, carefully guided, used to heal rather than to harm. Dr. Venn had developed treatments for coral addiction, coral poisoning, coral rejection. The resonance that had once driven Soups mad was now a source of connection, of community, of belonging. Homelander, John, lived in a small apartment in the xylem's residential sector. He worked in the hydroponic gardens, growing food for the community. He spoke softly now, moved carefully. He had stopped wearing the cape. He was learning to be human. It was hard. Every day was hard. But he was trying. And that, Dolmayan reminded him, was all anyone could do. The boys, Butcher, Frenchie, Huey, had become the xylem's liaison to the surface world. They worked with Grace Mallory to expose Vought's remaining secrets, to bring justice to the Soups who had abused their power, to build a bridge between the floating city and the world below. Butcher still smoked, still drank, still scowled, but sometimes, rarely, he smiled. And when he did, it almost reached his eyes. Celine had become something unexpected, a teacher. Her connection to the coral allowed her to help other Soups understand their powers, to control their resonance, to find peace with the song in their blood. She was still 9 years old, or 10, now, but she had the wisdom of someone who had seen the edge of the universe and chosen to come back. She visited John every week. They would sit in the garden, side by side, and listen to the coral hum. And sometimes, John would cry. And Celine would hold his hand. And that was enough. Dolmayan stood at the observation deck, looking out at the world below. The coral still pulsed, faintly, gently, a reminder of what had been and what could still be. But the hunger was gone. The mother was sleeping. And for the first time in his long, hard life, Thumb Dolmayan allowed himself to hope. Thumb Dolmayan, the coral remembers. He said it quietly, to no one. Thumb Dolmayan, but so do we. And we will not let the past destroy the future. Behind him, the xylem hummed with life, children laughing, engines thrumming, the quiet murmur of a community learning to live together. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And that was enough. The end. I hope you guys like epic amazing crossover What If that I made. Hope you guys like it. Did not forget to leave a comment down below.